The day I died, my husband's mistress locked my two children inside a burning grain shed, while my husband held me down in the snow and told me they were never worth saving. I could still hear little Daniel screaming for me through the wooden wall, his fists beating against the door until the flames swallowed the sound. Beside him, my daughter Lily coughed and cried, calling me Mama in a voice so thin it barely rose above the wind. I fought until my fingernails tore away and blood soaked into the white ground. But Colonel Raymond Carter kept one knee pressed between my shoulder blades, while Vivian Hale watched the roof collapse with a smile. "You should have known your place," Vivian said. Her red wool coat looked almost black beneath the smoke. She had worn my coat to my children's funeral before they were even dead. Raymond tightened his grip on my wrists. "Stop struggling, Evelyn," he said. "You have already embarrassed this family enough." Embarrassed him. I had followed him from one military posting to another. I had cooked for his officers, mended his uniforms, raised his children, cared for his mother, and turned a bare concrete apartment into a home, with nothing but ration coupons and stubbornness. When his pay was delayed, I sold my wedding bracelet to buy medicine for Lily. When he was wounded during a training accident, I stayed beside his hospital bed for 20 straight nights. Yet to Raymond, I was an embarrassment. Vivian stepped closer and crouched beside my face. Smoke curled around her perfectly arranged hair. "You really thought being his wife made you important," she whispered. "You were only useful because you gave him children." I twisted hard enough to dislocate my shoulder. Raymond did not let go. The shed groaned. A burning beam crashed through the roof, and Daniel's final scream cut through me. Something inside my chest broke, not my heart. Something deeper, something ancient. The snow beneath my cheek melted in a sudden circle. Steam hissed around my face. The ground trembled as if the earth itself had heard my children and wanted revenge. Vivian stumbled back. "What was that?" Raymond looked down at me, startled. For one breath, I felt everything. The heat inside the flames. The water trapped beneath the frozen soil. The iron nails holding the shed together. The wind rushing through the cracks. The dirt packed beneath Raymond's boots. Every element answered me. But I had awakened too late. A burning wall collapsed inward. The screaming stopped. My body went cold. Raymond released my wrists, not because he regretted anything, but because I no longer had the strength to fight. Vivian stood and brushed snow from her skirt. "The children are gone," she said calmly. "Now there is nothing tying you to her." Raymond stared at the burning shed. For one foolish second, I waited for grief to touch his face. It never came. He only asked, "Did you take the household register?" Vivian smiled. "It is already in my suitcase." They had planned everything. The forged letters accusing me of stealing military supplies. The rumors that I had been selling rationed grain. The witnesses Vivian paid. The transfer papers Raymond signed. Even the fire. They were not just killing me. They were erasing me. Raymond bent close enough that I could smell tobacco on his breath. "You should have accepted the divorce," he said. "Then the children might have lived." A laugh tore from my throat. It came out wet. "You were their father." His eyes hardened. They were weak. I stared at him until my vision blurred. Then I made him a promise. "If there is another life," I whispered, "I will take everything from you." Vivian laughed. Raymond stood. The last thing I saw was them walking away together, while the shed burned behind them. The last thing I felt was snow turning to water beneath my fingers. Then darkness swallowed me. I woke to the smell of boiled cabbage and coal smoke. Someone was pounding on a wooden door. "Evelyn, open up." My eyes snapped open. A pale ceiling stretched above me, cracked near the corner where the winter damp had spread like a gray stain. A faded mosquito net hung over the narrow bed. Beside my pillow sat a chipped enamel mug decorated with blue flowers. I knew that mug. I had broken it the week Raymond brought Vivian into our home for the first time. My breath stopped. The pounding came again. "Evelyn, I know you are awake," that voice. "My mother-in-law." Margaret Carter. I pushed myself upright so fast the room spun. My body felt wrong. No burned lungs, no broken fingers, no dislocated shoulder. No scar beneath my ribs from the surgery I had endured after Lily's birth. I lifted my hands. Smooth skin. Whole nails. A simple brass wedding ring. My heart crashed against my ribs. Across the room, a paper calendar hung beside the wardrobe. The date printed at the top was March 1974. I stared until the numbers blurred. 1974. 7 years before the fire. 7 years before my children died. A small sound came from the foot of the bed. I turned. Daniel stood there in wool socks and an oversized green sweater, his dark hair sticking up on one side. He was 4 years old again. His cheeks were round, his eyes were clear. He held a wooden horse with one missing wheel. "Mama," he said. "Grandma's angry." I could not breathe. Behind him, Lily sat on the floor wrapped in a patched yellow blanket. She was barely 2. She looked up at me with Raymond's gray eyes and reached out both arms. Mama. The world tilted. I fell from the bed. Daniel cried out as I dropped to my knees and pulled them both against me. Warm, alive, Daniel's small heart beat against my collarbone. Lily's fingers tangled in my hair. They smelled like soap, smoke, and the sweet grain porridge I had cooked the night before. I pressed my face into their hair and sobbed. Not quietly, not with dignity. I cried like a woman being torn open. Daniel patted my back. Yes, I said. My voice cracked. The worst dream. The pounding at the door became a violent rattle. Evelyn Carter, open this door right now. I held my children tighter. Memory returned in sharp pieces. March 1974. Raymond was away at a field exercise. Margaret had come to take the winter grain Raymond had left for us. She claimed his younger brother's family needed it more. In my first life, I had surrendered almost everything because Margaret called me selfish. Daniel became sick 2 weeks later. Lily lost so much weight that her ribs showed through her dress. That had been the beginning, not of the betrayal, of my surrender. Every time they demanded something, I gave. Every time they insulted me, I stayed silent. Every time Raymond chose his family over our children, I made excuses for him. I had believed endurance was virtue. It was not. Endurance without boundaries was permission. Margaret struck the door with something hard. You have 10 breaths before I call the guard captain. I rose slowly. Daniel looked frightened. In my first life, that expression had ruled me. I had wanted peace so badly that I gave our enemies the knife and showed them where to cut. Not again. I tucked Lily into Daniel's arms. Take your sister to the bedroom corner. He blinked. Why? Because Mama is going to open the door. He obeyed. I crossed the small apartment. The military family compound had been built in neat rows of gray brick buildings. Every household heard every argument. Every woman knew who received extra coal, whose husband had been promoted, whose child owned new shoes. Margaret loved an audience. So I gave her one. I opened the door. She nearly fell inside. Margaret Carter was 54 then, broad-shouldered, sharp-eyed, and dressed in a dark blue jacket fastened to the throat. Beside her stood Raymond's younger sister, Patricia, holding 2 empty grain sacks. Behind them waited 3 neighbors pretending not to watch. Margaret recovered and shoved the end of her cane against the floor. Finally, she said, "Bring out the grain." I leaned against the doorframe. No, silence fell across the corridor. Patricia laughed first. What did you say? I said no. Margaret's face tightened. That grain was purchased with my son's salary. That salary supports his wife and children. I am his mother, and they are his children. Her mouth opened. No one had ever answered her like that. Not me. Not Raymond. Not anyone in the Carter family. Margaret stepped closer. Your brother-in-law has 3 boys to feed. I have 2 children to feed. He works at the repair depot. His ration is smaller. Then he should speak to his commander. Patricia's face turned red. You selfish country woman. The insult hit exactly where it had in my first life. I had grown up on a farm in Iowa. Raymond's family never let me forget it. They mocked my accent, my hands, my lack of university education. Yet when food was scarce, they came to me, because I knew how to stretch flour, grow potatoes, and preserve meat. I looked at Patricia's empty sacks. You came for grain, I said. Not conversation. She lifted one hand. I caught her wrist before she could slap me. The movement surprised us both. Her skin was warm beneath my fingers. Then the air changed. A current ran through my palm. I felt the moisture inside her body, the iron in her blood, the calcium in her bones, the air trembling inside her lungs. My elemental power, it had returned with me. No, it had followed me. Patricia's eyes widened. What are you doing? I released her. A spark cracked between our fingers. She stumbled back and struck the wall. Margaret stared at me. I kept my face calm, though my pulse thundered. The power was faint, but it was real. Somewhere beneath the building, water shifted inside old pipe. The cold dust on the corridor floor stirred around my shoes. Heat gathered in my fingertips. The elements remembered me. Even if this life had forgotten. Margaret raised her cane. You think you can threaten us because Raymond is away? I have not threatened anyone. You grabbed your sister. She tried to strike me. Patricia clutched her wrist. You hurt me. There is not a mark on you. One of the neighbors coughed to hide a laugh. Margaret heard it. Her humiliation turned vicious. She pushed past me. I will take what belongs to my family. I moved before she reached the pantry. One step, then another. I placed my palm against the wall. The earth beneath the foundation answered. A low vibration rolled through the floor. The cabinet doors rattled. The enamel bowls chimed against one another. Margaret froze. A hairline crack raced across the plaster in front of her, and stopped at the toe of her shoe. Everyone stared. I stared too. I had not known I could do that. Not with so little strength. Margaret backed away from the crack. What happened? Old buildings settle, I said. My voice sounded steady. Inside I was shaking. I could control earth. Perhaps fire, perhaps water, perhaps wind, perhaps more. The power that awakened at my death had become my inheritance. Margaret regained her anger. You will regret this. I regretted many things, I said. Protecting my children will not be one of them. She looked at me strangely. The line carried more weight than she understood. Patricia dragged her toward the stairs. Come on. Raymond will deal with her. Margaret pointed her cane at me. When my son returns, you will hand over every sack and apologize on your knees. I smiled. Then he should come home quickly. They left without the grain. The neighbors scattered. I closed the door. My knees nearly gave out. Daniel peeked from behind the table. Are they gone? Yes. He carried Lily toward me with both arms wrapped around her waist. Lily kicked happily, unaware that in another life these people had helped starve her. I knelt and touched Daniel's cheek. I am sorry. For what? For not protecting you before. He frowned. You always protect us. His faith cut deeper than any accusation. I pulled him close. This time I will do it properly. He did not understand. He did not need to. I checked the pantry. 2 sacks of cornmeal, 1 sack of wheat flour, half a jar of rendered fat, dried beans, salt, a small bag of sugar I had been saving for Daniel's birthday. Enough food for perhaps 6 weeks if I was careful. In my first life, after Margaret took most of it, I survived by skipping meals. Not now. I laid my hand on the sack of cornmeal. The grains shifted beneath the cloth, earth. The corn had grown from soil. Even harvested and ground, some trace remained. I closed my eyes. The world unfolded, not in images and layers. The brick walls, the iron stove, water in the kettle, heat in the coal, air moving beneath the door, dust resting on the windowsill. And beyond them something vast, a silent dark space waiting. I reached for it. The pantry disappeared. For one terrible instant I floated in nothing. Then light spread beneath my feet. I stood in a field under a pale golden sky. Rows of black soil stretched toward a distant line of trees. A clear river wound across the land. To my left stood a stone farmhouse with a red roof. Behind it rose a barn, a well, and an empty orchard. The air smelled like rain. I looked down. I was still wearing my faded cotton nightdress. A breeze moved through my hair. This was not a dream. I walked to the river and knelt. The water was cold. When I touched it, blue light rippled from my fingers. Knowledge entered my mind without words. The river could purify. The soil could accelerate growth. The farmhouse could store anything without decay. The space itself was bound to me. I laughed. The sound broke into another sob. In my first life, I had begged for 1 sack of flour. Now I owned a world. A cry echoed from far away. Mama Daniel. I pulled myself back. The pantry slammed into view around me. Only a heartbeat had passed. Daniel stood in the doorway. Lily held the edge of his sweater. I crouched and opened my arms. They ran to me. I looked at the grain sacks again. This time I touched one and willed it away. It vanished. I entered the space and found it resting inside the farmhouse kitchen. My power was not only elemental, I had land water. Storage. A refuge no one could enter without me. A place where my children could survive anything. But survival was only the beginning. I carried the grain back into the apartment and spent the morning testing the limits while the children played nearby. A cup disappeared and returned. Then a chair, then the iron skillet. Living things were different. I could feel Daniel and Lily clearly, but I did not dare bring them inside until I understood the rules. The elemental abilities were weaker than the space, yet each responded to concentration. I could warm water without fire, pull moisture from a damp cloth, move a spoon across the table with a thread of air, make a pebble split in my palm. Tiny things, but power grew through use. I knew that with the same certainty I knew the river purified. By noon, my fear had hardened into purpose. Raymond would return in 3 days. In my first life, he had believed Margaret immediately. He forced me to surrender the grain. Then he punished me by withholding household money for a month. 3 weeks later, Vivian arrived at the compound as a newly assigned medical clerk. Raymond introduced her as the daughter of an old family friend. That was the first lie. The second was that she had nowhere else to stay. The third was that I was imagining the way she looked at him. This time, I would not wait 7 years for them to destroy us. I would strike before they understood a war had begun. But revenge without strength was only another form of begging. I needed money, food, evidence, allies, and a way to separate Raymond from every rank, privilege, and connection he treasured. I knew the future. I remembered the factory closures, the flood, the grain shortage, the promotion lists. The The corruption investigation would destroy 3 officers and elevate 2 others. I knew which piece of land outside the compound would become valuable. I knew which medicine would disappear from shelves. I knew that Raymond's commander, General Thomas Reed, would nearly lose his wife to a heart attack next winter. Most importantly, I knew where Raymond hid the ledger proving he had been selling military fuel through a civilian broker. In my first life, Vivian found it first. She used it to control him. This time it would belong to me. A knock sounded at the door, not Margaret. This knock was soft. Careful. I opened it and found a young soldier holding a paper bag. He was thin, freckled, and barely 20. His name returned to me at once. Private Samuel Brooks, Raymond's driver. In my first life, Samuel warned me about Vivian. I called him a liar. 3 months later, he died during a night transport accident everyone called bad luck. It had not been bad luck. He had seen Raymond move fuel drums off the official route. Samuel lifted the bag. Mom, Colonel Carter asked me to deliver this. Inside were 2 tins of condensed milk, a packet of tea, and an envelope. My stomach tightened. I opened the envelope. Raymond's handwriting filled half a page. Evelyn, my mother informed me of your disgraceful behavior. Give her the grain immediately. Vivian Hale will arrive tomorrow and stay in our spare room until permanent quarters are assigned. Prepare the room and show her proper respect. Do not create trouble for me. No greeting, no concern for the children, no question about whether we had enough to eat. Just commands. Samuel watched my face. Is everything all right? I folded the letter. Yes, he hesitated. Mom, there is something you should know. This was the moment. The warning I had refused to hear. I looked directly at him. Tell me. His shoulders loosened, as though he had expected resistance. Miss Hale has not been staying at the temporary barracks. Where has she been staying? Samuel glanced toward the stairwell. At the officer's guest house near the west gate, with whom he swallowed. Colonel Carter has visited her every night since the exercise began. The old pain rose. It was sharp, but it did not own me anymore. I stepped aside. Come in, Private Brooks. He looked startled. Mom? You took a risk telling me. I thought you deserved to know. You were right. That surprised him more than anger would have. He entered. Daniel recognized him and ran over with the wooden horse. Samuel crouched to fix the missing wheel using a small pocket knife and a piece of wire. I watched him carefully, loyal, observant, underestimated. Exactly the kind of man Raymond treated as disposable. I set water on the stove and warmed it with a touch of my fingers before adding tea. Samuel did not notice yet. Private Brooks, I said, did Colonel Carter send anything else? He stiffened. No, Mom, you are a poor liar. His face went pale. I placed the folded letter on the table. I am not asking to punish you. He looked toward the children. Then he reached inside his jacket and removed a small brass key. Colonel Carter dropped this in the vehicle yesterday, he said. He told me it opened a storage locker, but the tag has the number of a guest house room. I took the key. Room 12, I remembered. Raymond and Vivian used room 12 for 6 months before moving their meetings elsewhere. In that room, Vivian kept letters, receipts, photographs, the first threads of their conspiracy. In my previous life, I found only ashes after they burned everything. Now the evidence was waiting. Samuel lowered his voice. I heard them arguing. Miss Hale said she would not wait forever. The colonel said he needed time to move money without attracting attention. How much money? I do not know. I did. $7,000. An enormous sum for our family. Money Raymond claimed had never existed. I turned the brass key in my fingers. The metal hummed iron copper. Traces of oil. The element answered me with a faint pulse. A lock was only metal arranged in a shape. Soon I would not need keys, but for tonight this one would do. I looked at Samuel. Can you take me to the west gate after dark? His eyes widened. Mom, if the colonel finds out, he will not, and the children? They will be safe. For the first time, I meant it absolutely. No locked door could hold my children again. No fire could take them. No hunger could weaken them. No family could claim them. I folded Raymond's letter once more and held it above the cold stove. Heat gathered beneath my thumb. The paper blackened. A small flame appeared. Samuel stood so fast his chair scraped the floor. I watched the words burn until only ash remained. Then I closed my fist. The flame vanished. Samuel stared at my hand. I met his eyes. You took a risk for me, I said. Now I will tell you something in return. He did not move. The transport accident scheduled for next month will kill you if you stay on Raymond's route. His face emptied. What? On the night of April 9th, he will order you to drive fuel drums through the northern pass. The brakes will fail before the second bridge. How could you know that? Because I had stood beside his coffin. Because his mother had cried into my shoulder. Because Raymond had called his death unfortunate. and collected silence from everyone involved. I reached across the table and placed the brass key between us. You do not have to believe me today. Just remember the date. Samuel looked from the key to the ash in the stove. Then he slowly sat down. Outside wind pushed against the window. I felt it curl around the building. I felt water moving beneath the earth. I felt the coal fire breathing. For 7 years, Raymond Carter and Vivian Hale had believed I was weak because I chose not to fight. They had mistaken kindness for helplessness. They had mistaken silence for ignorance. They had mistaken motherhood for a chain. They were wrong. My children were not my weakness. They were the reason the entire world was about to learn my strength. I closed my fingers around the key to room 12. This time, I said, I will take back every single thing. Samuel's face remained pale long after the ash cooled in the stove. He looked like a man standing on the edge of a bridge, afraid to step back because he had already seen the drop below. I poured the tea. His hands shook when he accepted the cup. You said the brakes will fail, he said. Are you saying Colonel Carter plans to kill me? I am saying Raymond protects himself before he protects anyone else. That is not an answer. It is the only answer you need tonight. Samuel stared into the tea. Steam fogged his glasses. He had always been too honest for Raymond's world. That was why he had died in my first life. Honest men made dangerous witnesses, especially when they believed rank and honor meant the same thing. I leaned closer. Do you still have access to the vehicle maintenance records? Yes. Then begin copying everything connected to the northern transport route. Fuel requests, brake inspections, replacement parts, driver assignments. His eyes lifted. That could get me discharged. It could keep you alive. He swallowed. What do you intend to do with it? Build a wall. Against your husband? Against everyone who believes my children are acceptable collateral. The answer silenced him. From the bedroom corner, Daniel laughed as Lily dropped the repaired wooden horse and tried to catch it with both hands. The sound was bright and small. Samuel looked toward them. Something changed in his face, not certainty, but decision. I can take you to the west gate, he said. There is a supply delivery at 8. The guard will recognize the truck. In room 12? The guest house clerk leaves the front desk for supper around 8:15. Good. He glanced at my cotton nightdress. You will need different clothes. I smiled faintly. That is the easiest problem we have. After he left, I locked the door and took my children into the bedroom. Daniel sat cross-legged on the bed while Lily leaned against him, sucking her thumb. I knelt in front of them. Daniel frowned at once. Grandma might come back. She will not get inside. What if Papa comes? The word struck like a blade dragged across an old wound. In this life, Daniel still loved him. Of course he did. Raymond had not yet taught him fear. I smoothed Daniel's hair. If Papa comes, you do not open the door. But he is Papa. Tonight, you open the door only for me. He studied my face with the solemn suspicion of a child who understood more than adults wanted to admit. Are you mad at him? Yes. Did he do something bad? Yes. Will you make him say sorry? I looked at Lily. Her small fingers curled around the blanket. No, I said. I am going to make sure he can never hurt us. Daniel did not ask more. Children accepted truth more easily than adults when it was spoken plainly. I placed one hand on each of them and reached inward. The hidden space opened. For one breath, resistance pressed against me, like trying to pull a heavy door through deep water. Then the bedroom vanished. We stood beneath the pale golden sky. Daniel gasped. Lily squealed. The black soil stretched before us. The river flashed beneath the light. The stone farmhouse waited with its red roof and clean windows. Daniel turned in a circle. Where are we? A safe place. Is it magic? Yes. He accepted that immediately. Children did not waste time arguing with miracles. Lily toddled toward the grass beside the farmhouse and dropped to her knees. She touched the blades with both hands, then laughed when they swayed beneath her fingers. Daniel ran after her. I followed closely, testing the space's response to them. The land welcomed them. I felt it. Their presence settled into the soil like seeds. A mark formed inside my mind. 2 small points of warm light, each bound to me. I could sense where they stood, how fast their hearts beat, even the rhythm of their breathing. Relief moved through me so violently that my legs weakened. No fire could reach them here, no locked shed, no armed guard, no law written by men like Raymond. I entered the farmhouse. The kitchen held a stone stove, wooden cabinets, a long table, and shelves that seemed to deepen when I looked at them. The bedroom upstairs had 2 narrow beds and 1 larger one. Clean blankets waited inside a cedar chest. The place had been prepared for us. I returned to the children. Listen carefully. You may play near the farmhouse, but do not cross the river. Do not go into the forest. Stay together. Daniel nodded. Can we eat? I laughed despite myself. Yes, I brought in bread, condensed milk, 2 boiled eggs, and a jar of peaches I had hidden from Margaret months earlier. We ate beneath the farmhouse porch. Daniel dipped bread into the sweet milk. Lily pressed peach slices between her fingers and smeared syrup across her cheeks. I watched them until the image became a vow. This was what power was for, not pride, not conquest. A table where my children could eat without asking permission. When they grew sleepy, I tucked them into the farmhouse beds. Time moved strangely inside the space. I could feel the outside world, but it seemed distant, slowed by an unseen layer. I left a lantern burning beside the door, kissed them both, and returned to the apartment. The room felt unbearably empty, but they were safe. For the first time in 2 lives, I could move without fear dragging behind me. I opened the wardrobe. My clothing was plain: 2 cotton dresses, 1 dark skirt, 3 blouses. A military wife was to look respectable, modest, and forgettable. I chose the dark skirt, a gray blouse, and my only wool coat. Then I reached into the hidden space and drew water from the river into the enamel basin. The water glowed faintly against my skin. When I washed my face, exhaustion lifted. The ache in my back disappeared. The cracked skin around my fingers softened. Even the bruise on my wrist from catching Patricia's hand faded within minutes. Healing water. I looked at my reflection in the small mirror. I was 27 again. My hair was dark and thick. My face had not yet been hollowed by hunger or suspicion. There was still softness in my cheeks. In my first life, Vivian had told me Raymond strayed because I had stopped taking care of myself, as if betrayal were caused by an unpressed dress, as if a man's cruelty belonged to the nearest woman. I braided my hair tightly and pinned it beneath a scarf. Then I practiced controlling heat. The flame in the stove bent toward my fingers. I drew it higher, lower. I pressed my palm against the iron door and felt warmth gather beneath my skin without burning me. Fire obeyed emotion too easily. That made it dangerous. Earth required intention. Water required calm. Air responded to movement. Fire wanted anger. I had enough anger to burn the entire compound, so I learned restraint. At 8, Samuel tapped twice on the back window. I stepped into the corridor, locked the door, and followed him down the service stairs. The night air tasted of coal and frost. Military trucks idled near the supply depot. Men in heavy jackets moved crates beneath yellow lamps. Samuel led me to a canvas-covered transport vehicle and opened the passenger door. "You should sit in the back," he said. "I prefer to see where I am going. If the gate guard notices you, he will see a colonel's wife traveling in her husband's assigned vehicle." Samuel hesitated. Then he nodded. We drove through the compound. The barracks passed in gray rows. The officers' club glowed at the top of the hill. Beyond it stood the guest house, a long brick building with white-trimmed windows. I had walked past it countless times. In my first life, I believed Raymond spent his evenings there discussing field reports. How carefully betrayal hid inside ordinary buildings. At the west gate, the guard raised one gloved hand. Samuel lowered the window. "Supply inspection," he said. The guard shone a flashlight across the cabin. His beam touched my face. "Mrs. Carter? My husband forgot something important." The guard smiled nervously. "Yes, Mum." The barrier rose. Samuel did not breathe again until we reached the guest house lane. He parked behind the laundry building. The clerk should leave any minute. I watched the front entrance. At 8:14, a heavy man in a brown cardigan stepped outside, locked the desk drawer, and crossed toward the dining hall. Memory had not betrayed me. I stepped down from the truck. Samuel caught my arm. "What if they are inside? Then I will learn whether Raymond is brave without witnesses." "Mom, stay with the truck." He looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he released me. I crossed the courtyard. The guest house smelled of floor wax and old tobacco. A radio played softly behind the empty desk. Somewhere upstairs, pipes groaned. Room 12 stood at the far end of the second floor. I inserted the brass key. It turned. The room was dark. I closed the door behind me and waited until my eyes adjusted. A writing desk, 2 chairs, 1 wardrobe, a bottle of bourbon beside a pair of glasses. Vivian's perfume hung in the air. Rose and amber. I hated that I recognized it. On the desk lay a silver cigarette case engraved with Raymond's initials. No one could claim this was a misunderstanding. I touched the desk. Wood. Iron, ink inside the drawer, paper. A locked metal cash box hidden beneath the floorboard. The elements mapped the room around me. I crouched near the bed. One plank had been lifted recently. I slid my fingers into the gap and pulled. The board rose. Beneath it sat a green military cash box. I placed my palm against the lid. Metal pulsed beneath my skin. I imagined the pins inside the lock, tiny pieces. Pressure, alignment. The mechanism clicked. I opened the box. 7 bundles of cash filled the bottom. Letters rested above them, tied with blue ribbon. Photograph receipts. 2 account books. And a sealed envelope bearing General Thomas Reed's name. My first instinct was to take everything. Then I stopped. If the box vanished, Raymond would know immediately. A frightened enemy destroyed evidence. A confident enemy added more. I moved the contents into my hidden space one item at a time, then replaced them with blank paper cut to the same thickness and weighted with scraps of metal from the room's waste bin. The cash box felt unchanged when I closed it. The letters were different. I opened the first. "My dear Raymond, your wife still suspects nothing. She smiled at me this morning and offered me tea." I almost felt sorry for her. Almost the rest was worse. Vivian wrote about the stolen fuel as casually as she wrote about dresses. She listed names, dates, bribes. She complained that Raymond had not transferred enough money. She demanded he move me and the children to a smaller apartment so she could take ours after the divorce. One line made my fingers go cold. "If the girl becomes sick again, perhaps nature will solve the problem for us, Lily." She had been sick that winter. Vivian had poisoned her medicine. I had blamed myself because I thought I measured the dose incorrectly. The room narrowed. Fire rushed into my palm, the letter's edge browned. I forced myself to stop it, not ashes. I placed the letter into the space. Another envelope contained photographs of Raymond and Vivian at a lakeside motel. Another held a list of officers receiving money from civilian fuel sales. Then I opened the account book. Raymond's handwriting, truck numbers, fuel quantities, payment dates. Samuel's assigned route appeared 3 times. The final entry was for April 9th, Northern Pass, 400 gallons. Driver Samuel Brooks. In the margin, Raymond had written one word: replace. The page blurred. Samuel had not died in an accident. He had been scheduled. I placed the ledger into the space. The sealed envelope for General Reed remained. I turned it beneath the lamp. The wax had not been broken. I could have opened it with heat and resealed it. Instead, I touched the metal clasp hidden inside the paper. A faint vibration answered. Something small rested within, not paper. A key. I opened the envelope carefully with a thread of heated air. Inside lay a brass bank key and a note. The note promised General Reed a share of the fuel operation if he blocked an internal inspection. But the handwriting was not Raymond's. It belonged to Major Philip Dane, Raymond's immediate superior. The latter was larger than I remembered. Raymond was not the top. He was only the first rung. I returned the note and key to the envelope, resealed it, and placed it exactly where I found it. A floorboard creaked in the corridor. Voices. Raymond, Vivian. I extinguished the lamp with a flick of air. The doorknob turned, locked. Raymond cursed softly. "I told you to stop carrying that key in your coat pocket. You were the one who dropped it." Vivian's voice, close, alive. I had heard her screaming as police dragged her from the gala in dreams I had never lived. Now she stood one thin door away. Raymond tried another key. The lock scraped. I had nowhere to hide. The wardrobe was too obvious. The bed too low. The window opened onto the courtyard where Samuel waited. I pressed my back to the wall and reached for the air. Wind gathered around me. Not enough to make me invisible, but perhaps enough to bend attention. The lock opened. Raymond entered first. He wore his field coat over a dark uniform. Snow clung to his shoulders. His face looked younger than I remembered, but the cold impatience in his eyes was already complete. Vivian followed. She was beautiful. That had always been true. Her hair was pinned beneath a red scarf. Her lips were painted. She wore the wool coat that would one day belong to me before she stole it. Raymond closed the door. They did not see me. I stood less than 6 feet away. Air curled between us like clear glass. Vivian removed her gloves. Did she give Margaret the grain? No. Raymond's jaw tightened. She embarrassed my mother in front of the neighbors. Vivian laughed. Perhaps your little farm wife finally grew a spine. Evelyn does not have a spine. She has moods. I felt fire climb my arms. The air around me trembled. I held it still. Vivian poured bourbon into one glass. You should discipline her. I will. How? Raymond took the drink. Money first, then isolation. She cannot survive without me. I looked at him. In another life, I had believed the same thing. That belief had killed us. Vivian sat on the bed. And the children? They make her easier to control. She tilted her head. Watches too much. He is 4. He repeats things. Raymond drank, then stopped speaking carelessly around him. Vivian's eyes sharpened. You always defend them. I defend nothing. I manage problems. Her voice dropped. And am I a problem? He crossed the room and kissed her. I watched. The old grief arrived late, like a letter sent to a woman who no longer lived at that address. There was pain, but no surprise, only clarity. Raymond had never been stolen. He had chosen. Vivian pulled away first. Major Dane wants the northern shipment moved up. When tomorrow? Raymond frowned. The route is not ready. He says the inspection team is coming early. What inspection? General Reed's office received an anonymous complaint. Raymond's face changed. Fear. Small but real. Who sent it? No one knows. I almost smiled. The future had already shifted. In my first life, the inspection had come in May. Now it was moving sooner. Perhaps my return had changed more than my choices. Perhaps the world itself was responding. Raymond paced. We need Brooks on the route. Brooks is loyal. He is observant. Vivian swirled the bourbon. Then make him less observant. Silence. Raymond looked at her. She smiled. Accidents happen in winter. My nails dug into my palms. Samuel's death had been decided in this room. Not next month, tonight. Raymond set down the glass. I will handle him after the shipment. And Evelyn? I will send her to my mother's house with the children. Vivian's smile widened. Then I can move into the apartment. Not yet. You keep saying that. Because appearances matter. So does patience. She stood and stepped close. I did not leave Chicago to sleep in a guest house forever. Raymond lowered his voice. You will have the apartment. You will have the money. Just let me finish this properly. Vivian touched his collar. And your wife? She will sign whatever I put in front of her. I let the air current collapse. The room changed. The lamp flame bent toward me. Raymond turned. His glass slipped from his hand. It struck the floor and shattered. Vivian screamed. I stood against the wall, fully visible. For 3 heartbeats, no one moved. Raymond's face emptied. I stepped forward. Vivian backed toward the bed. How did you get in here? Through the door. Raymond recovered first. His shock became anger, because anger was the only emotion he knew how to use. What are you doing here listening? You followed me? No. His gaze dropped to the floorboard beside the bed, then returned to my face. Too quickly. Give me the key. I held it up. This key? He crossed the room. I lifted one finger. The shattered glass rose from the floor. Every piece. They hovered between us, glittering in the lamplight. Raymond stopped. Vivian covered her mouth. I moved my finger. The glass spun slowly. A circle of sharp edges turned around Raymond's throat. No one breathed. I had not known I could do it. But rage had made the lesson simple. Glass came from sand. Sand came from earth. Everything belonged to something older. Raymond's voice dropped. What are you? Your wife. The glass tightened. A thin line of blood appeared beneath his jaw. He went still. Vivian whispered, this is impossible. I looked at her. So is surviving a fire after you locked the door. Her face changed. She did not understand the words. Not yet. But some instinct recognized danger. Raymond tried to reclaim control. Evelyn, lower the glass. No, the children need you calm. The sentence almost made me laugh. He used them even now. I stepped closer. You will not send us to Margaret's house. His eyes flickered. You heard that? I heard everything. Vivian moved toward the desk, the cash box. I sent a gust of air across the room. The drawers slammed shut on her fingers. She screamed and jerked back. Do not touch anything, I said. Raymond's voice became careful. What do you want? There, the first crack. Not remorse. Negotiation. Men like Raymond believed every person had a price because they did. I want the household money you withheld. I have not withheld. The glass pressed closer. He stopped. I want full control of the children's ration cards. Fine. I want Vivian removed from this compound by tomorrow morning. Vivian stared at him. Raymond said nothing. The glass cut another thin line. Fine, he repeated. Vivian's face twisted. You cannot agree to that. He did not look at her. I continued. You will tell Margaret that the grain belongs to your children. His jaw tightened. You are humiliating my family. No. I am setting a boundary. Humiliation comes later. The words settled in the room. Raymond looked at me as if seeing a stranger wearing my face. He was right. The woman who had begged him to love her had died in the snow. I was what remained. I lowered my hand. The glass dropped. It hit the floor all at once. Vivian flinched. Raymond touched the blood at his throat. You think this changes anything? Yes, you are still my wife for now. His eyes hardened. You have nowhere to go. I smiled. You still believe that? I walked to the door. Vivian found her courage behind Raymond's body. You cannot prove anything. I looked over my shoulder. Not tonight. The color left her face. I left the room. Samuel waited in the truck with both hands locked around the steering wheel. When I climbed in, he saw my expression and did not ask what happened. Drive. He started the engine. We passed through the west gate without trouble. Only when the guest house disappeared behind us did I reach into my coat and place Raymond's ledger on the seat between us. Samuel looked down. His own name stared back at him beside the April shipment. Then he saw the word written in the margin, replace. His breath broke. You were telling the truth. Yes. He gripped the wheel. What do we do? I looked toward the dark outline of the compound. Raymond believed he had survived the night because I walked away. Vivian believed evidence meant only what could be found. Major Dane believed the inspection was still his greatest threat. They were all wrong. The greatest threat had just left room 12, carrying their future inside a hidden world. We let them move the shipment, I said. Samuel turned toward me. You said they planned to kill me. They planned to send you. What is the difference? This time you will not be driving. The truck rolled beneath the gate lights. I felt the ledger resting inside my space. I felt my children sleeping safely beneath the golden sky. And somewhere ahead, I felt the first piece of Raymond's world beginning to crack. Tomorrow night, I said, we give them a new driver. The new driver was already dead. At least, that was what Raymond would believe. Samuel drove us back through the compound while I explained the plan in pieces. Not all of it. Trust had to be earned carefully, even when a man had already risked his life for me. The northern convoy leaves after sunset, I said. Major Dane moved the shipment forward because he thinks the inspection team is coming. Samuel kept his eyes on the road. It is coming. How do you know? I copied a message from headquarters this afternoon. General Reed requested fuel inventories from every unit in the district. That was useful. Did Raymond see it? No. The communication clerk gave it to Major Dane. Then Dane is already destroying records. Samuel nodded grimly. He will blame a driver. Exactly. The truck turned between two rows of housing blocks. Yellow windows glowed through the dark. Somewhere nearby, a radio played a country song I remembered hearing during Daniel's 4th birthday. The future was become unbearable in small ways. A melody, a coat, a date on a calendar. Every ordinary thing reminded me that catastrophe was not born suddenly. It grew quietly inside familiar rooms while everyone continued setting tables and folding laundry. Samuel parked behind my building. What do you mean by a new driver? We give Raymond someone he cannot afford to kill. He frowned. Who? Major Dane's nephew. Samuel stared at me. Lieutenant Henry Dane? Yes. He is an officer. He is also a drunk, a gambler, and desperate to impress his uncle. That does not mean he will drive a fuel truck through the northern pass. No. But he will sit in one. Understanding came slowly. You want him found with the shipment. I want him found inside the lead vehicle with Raymond's route papers in his pocket. That could destroy his career. I looked at Samuel. They planned to send you down a mountain with failed brakes. His mouth tightened. I am not defending him. Then do not confuse consequence with cruelty. I opened the passenger door. Samuel stopped me. How do we get Lieutenant Dane into the truck? Tomorrow afternoon he will be playing cards in the basement of the Falcon Club. Samuel blinked. You know that too? In another life I learned where careless men went when they thought no one important was watching. What do we offer him? Nothing. Samuel looked even more confused. We let him steal an opportunity. I stepped down from the truck. Bring me a blank route authorization form, an officer's field jacket, and 1 bottle of bourbon. Those are not easy things to get. Neither is surviving April 9th. That silenced him. I watched him drive away before climbing the stairs. The apartment door was still locked. No scratches marked the frame. Margaret had not returned. I entered the hidden space. Daniel and Lily were asleep together in one bed, though I had tucked them into separate ones. Daniel's hand rested over his sister's shoulder. I sat beside them and let the silence settle around me. Then I took out the evidence from room 12. The farmhouse table became a battlefield. Letters on one side, fuel receipts on another, photographs in the center, the account books at the head. I read everything. Raymond's network stretched farther than I remembered. Major Philip Dane controlled the depot. A civilian contractor named Walter Pike purchased stolen fuel through a trucking company. Captain Lewis Grant falsified maintenance reports. Sergeant Owen Mercer altered inventory totals. Vivian carried messages between them because officers rarely suspected a smiling medical clerk. 4 men, 1 woman, a ladder. Raymond was not the most powerful, but he was the most ambitious. The ledgers showed him quietly diverting larger shares to himself. He planned to betray Dane eventually. That made him useful. A man who intended to stab his partners always kept better evidence than a loyal accomplice. I found 3 unsigned reports written in Raymond's hand. Each exposed 1 member of the network while protecting him. Insurance. He had prepared them in case the operation collapsed. I almost admired the precision. Then I remembered Daniel screaming behind the burning door. Admiration died. I copied the reports by hand. The original papers returned to the hidden storage room. My copies went into separate envelopes, 1 for General Reed, 1 for the military police, 1 for a newspaper editor named Charles Webb, who would become famous next year for exposing procurement fraud. 3 waves. If one door closed, another would open. That was how I would fight now. Not with one accusation. With a flood. Before dawn, I carried Daniel and Lily back into the apartment. Lily woke while I dressed her. Farm, she murmured. She nodded sleepily. Daniel sat up. Can we go again? Anyone. Not even Papa? Especially not Papa. His expression became serious. Because he did something bad, yes. Daniel looked down at his wooden horse. What if he says sorry? I tied his shoe. Some apologies are only tools people use when they want another chance to hurt you. He did not fully understand, but he remembered. Children always remembered the sentences adults assumed were too complicated. At 7, Margaret arrived with Patricia and Raymond. He did not knock softly. The door shook under his fist. Evelyn Daniel flinched. I opened the door before Raymond struck it again. He wore his uniform and the same field coat from room 12. A fresh white bandage covered the cut beneath his jaw. Margaret saw it. What happened to your neck? His eyes stayed on me. Vivian had not come. Good. Fear had made her cautious. Margaret pushed forward. Tell her. Raymond entered without invitation. Patricia followed, carrying the empty sacks again. The neighbors opened their doors. Raymond noticed them and lowered his voice. Close the door. No. His face hardened. This is a family matter. Then your family should learn how you manage one. Margaret hissed, disgraceful. I stepped aside just enough for the corridor to see inside. Raymond's control mattered more to him than truth. He could scream at me in private. In public, he needed to appear reasonable. That was why witnesses were power. He looked toward Daniel and Lily. Daniel did not move. Raymond's voice sharpened. I said, go. I placed one hand on Daniel's shoulder. They stay. Raymond stared at me. The glass from room 12 existed between us, though no one else could see it. He remembered the edges around his throat. His voice changed. My mother says you refuse to share the grain. The grain feeds your children. My brother's household is struggling, so is yours. I sent enough money. You sent nothing this month. A murmur came from the corridor. Raymond's jaw tightened. That is not true. I walked to the table and lifted his letter. Not the one I had burned, a copy written in my hand from memory. No greeting. No concern. Only orders. You instructed me to give away our winter food and prepare the spare room for Vivian Hale. Margaret glanced at Raymond. Who is Vivian? Patricia answered, too quickly. I looked at her. You know her? Patricia's face changed. There it was, another thread. Raymond stepped between us. This is not the time. It is exactly the time. I unfolded the copied letter. You sent condensed milk and tea yesterday. Nothing for Daniel. Nothing for Lily. Yet you have money for a private guesthouse room. The corridor went silent. Raymond's expression did not move, but his eyes did. He was calculating. How do you know about the guest house? I smiled faintly. Training accident? His hand rose toward the bandage. Margaret noticed. She looked from him to me. What is going on? Raymond turned on her. Mother, take the grain and leave. No. The word came from me. Patricia marched toward the pantry. I moved one finger. The sacks inside slid away from the wall and vanished into the hidden space. Patricia opened the pantry. Empty shelves stared back at her. She spun around. Where is it? I moved it. When? Before you arrived. Margaret's cane struck the floor. You knew we were coming. I know many things now. Raymond looked at the empty pantry. Suspicion tightened his face. He knew the grain had been there yesterday. He also knew I could move glass without touching it. But he could not accuse me of witchcraft in front of half the building without sounding, and so he chose authority. Evelyn, you will tell me where the food is. No. I am your husband. That is a legal condition, not a divine rank. A neighbor laughed aloud. Margaret turned toward the corridor. Have you people no shame? I answered before anyone else could. They are not the ones trying to take food from 2 children. Margaret's face darkened. Raymond lowered his voice until only I could hear. You are pushing too far, so did you. His gaze flicked to Daniel. I stepped between them. The air in the room changed. The curtain lifted, though the window was shut. Raymond felt it. He stepped back. Margaret did not understand why her son retreated, but she saw it. That wounded her pride more than my refusal. You have bewitched him, she said. No. He is simply learning that I can say no. Patricia pointed at me. Raymond, throw her out. Daniel clutched my skirt. Raymond saw it. For one instant, I wondered whether some buried instinct might stop him. Then he spoke. If you continue this behavior, I will send you back to your father's farm. The old me would have panicked. My father's farm had been sold after his death. I had nowhere to return. Raymond knew that. He believed it was a weapon. I looked him in the eyes. Put it in writing. He hesitated. What? Write that you are expelling me and the children from military housing because I refuse to surrender their food. Margaret snapped. Do not be ridiculous. I walked to the desk and set down paper. Sign it. Raymond did not move. A written threat could be examined. A spoken threat lived only in fear. He understood the difference. I picked up the pen and offered it. Go on. His face turned cold. You think you are clever. No, I think you are frightened of records. The sentence landed exactly where I wanted. His eyes narrowed. Records of what? I let the silence answer. Margaret looked between us. Patricia stopped breathing. Raymond took one step closer. Come outside. No, we need to speak privately. You have nothing private left to say. His control cracked. He grabbed my arm. The moment his fingers closed around me, the water in the kettle exploded upward. It formed a shining rope in the air. The stream wrapped around his wrist and twisted. Raymond cried out. His grip opened. The water hung between us like a living serpent. Margaret screamed. Patricia stumbled into the wall. The neighbors backed away but did not close their doors. I released the water. It splashed across the floor. Raymond stared at his reddened wrist. No one spoke. I could hear Lily breathing. Daniel's small fingers tightened around my skirt. I kept my voice calm. Do not touch me again. Margaret crossed herself. What are you? The same question Raymond had asked. This time I gave a different answer. A mother who learned too late the first time. Raymond's face went white. He remembered my words in room 12, the fire, the locked door. He did not understand, but he felt the outline of something impossible. I turned toward Margaret. You will leave without the grain. She looked at the wet floor. Then at Raymond. He said nothing. For the first time in his life, he could not protect her authority without exposing his own fear. Margaret gathered what dignity she could. This family will never accept you again. I accept that. Her eyes widened. Rejection had always been her sharpest weapon. It became useless the moment I stopped wanting her approval. Patricia dragged her into the corridor. Raymond remained. Take the children downstairs, he said to me. No. We need to discuss Vivian. Discuss her with your commander. His jaw tightened. You will not bring my career into this. Your career entered room 12 before I did. He went still. You took something. What did you take? I looked at the bandage under his jaw. Sleep poorly tonight. Then I closed the door in his face. He stood outside for several seconds. I heard his breathing. Then his boots moved down the stairs. The neighbors began whispering before he reached the landing. By noon, everyone in the compound knew Colonel Carter's wife had thrown out his mother, exposed a mysterious woman at the guest house, and somehow made water leap from a kettle. Stories changed as they traveled. By evening, someone claimed I had summoned a storm inside the apartment. That rumor would help me. Fear protected boundaries when laws did not. Samuel arrived just before sunset with the supplies I requested. The officer's field jacket belonged to Lieutenant Henry Dane. How did you get this? He left it at the vehicle pool after a drinking inspection. I raised an eyebrow. A drinking inspection? Samuel almost smiled. He inspected the contents of his flask. The route authorization form was blank but stamped. The bourbon was expensive. Where is Lieutenant Dane Club? Good. I sent Daniel and Lily into the hidden space with food and strict instructions. Then Samuel and I walked to the club separately. The Falcon occupied the basement beneath an old recreation hall. Officers officially went there to play billiards. Unofficially, they gambled, drank, and traded favors. Smoke coated the ceiling. Men crowded around card tables. Henry Dane sat beneath a green lamp with his jacket off and his tie loose. He was 29, broad-faced, handsome in the careless way of men who had never paid fully for a mistake. 3 stacks of money sat in front of him. 2 were shrinking. A civilian gambler named Frank Nolan held most of the winnings. I knew Nolan. In my first life, he arranged loans for military families and collected repayment with threats. He also worked for Walter Pike. Another rung. I took a seat at the bar where Henry could see me. He noticed at once, not because I was beautiful, because married women from the officers' housing block did not sit alone in the Falcon. He whispered something to the man beside him. Then he smiled at me. I looked away. Men like Henry pursued what seemed forbidden and ignored what was offered freely. Samuel entered through the service door wearing a mechanic's coat. He passed behind Henry's chair and dropped the officer's field jacket over an empty stool. The route authorization rested inside the pocket. My handwriting named Henry as temporary convoy supervisor. The signature beneath it resembled Major Dane's. I had copied it from the sealed note in room 12. Forgery was a dangerous weapon. So was a rifle. Both depended on where you aimed. Henry lost another hand. Frank Nolan laughed. You are out of luck tonight, Lieutenant. Henry poured bourbon into his glass. I make my own luck. Your uncle makes it. The table went quiet. Henry's pride flared exactly as I expected. My uncle does not make anything for me. Nolan gathered the money. Then perhaps you should stop using his name when you borrow. Henry stood. His chair scraped hard against the floor. I will pay you tomorrow. You said that yesterday. I said tomorrow. Nolan leaned back. Bring me $500 by midnight, or I speak to Major Dane. Henry's face changed. He could not let his uncle learn about the debt. Not when Philip Dane had already warned him that another scandal would end his career. Henry reached for his jacket. His hand found the route authorization. He unfolded it. I watched his eyes move across the page. Temporary convoy supervisor, northern route, special compensation, $200. Authority to inspect confiscated civilian goods. The last line was bait. Henry read it twice. Confiscated goods meant anything found in an unregistered shipment. He would imagine liquor, cigarettes, electronics, things he could sell, things that could erase his debt. He looked toward the door, then toward Frank Nolan. I will have your money. Nolan smiled. I am sure your uncle will. Henry shoved the authorization into his pocket and left. Samuel followed 5 minutes later. I remained long enough to hear Nolan speak quietly to another man. Tell Pike the convoy is moving tonight. The plan widened. Walter Pike would be waiting at the northern pass. Raymond expected Samuel to drive. Henry believed he was supervising. Pike believed he was receiving stolen fuel. Major Dane believed the route was secure, and General Reed's inspection team had already left headquarters. All of them were moving toward the same road. I finished my water and stood. Frank Nolan blocked my path. Carter, I had never spoken to him in this life. He knew me anyway. That meant Raymond's circle had discussed me. What do you want? He smiled without warmth. Colonel Carter has been worried about you. How touching. He says you have been under strain. Did he also tell you about Vivian? The smile disappeared. Good. You should go home, Nolan said. I am going. He moved closer. Some doors are safer unopened. I looked at his right hand. Ink beneath the fingernail. Coal dust on the cuff. He had handled shipping papers and depot crates today. I reached for the air around him and pulled. His breath caught. Just slightly. Enough. His hand went to his throat. I leaned close. Then you should stop standing in doorways. I released him. He staggered back. I walked out. Snow had begun to fall. Samuel waited in the shadow behind the recreation hall. He took the authorization, he said. I saw the convoy leaves in 40 minutes. Where is Raymond? At the depot? And Major Dane? On his way to meet Walter Pike at the northern warehouse, I smiled. They do not trust each other. No. That is why they will destroy each other so efficiently. Samuel looked at me uneasily. What happens now? Raymond sees Henry in the truck and realizes the route has changed. He will stop the convoy. No. Why not? Because the inspection team is coming. If the shipment remains at the depot, the stolen fuel is found there. If it moves, he still has a chance to blame Henry. Samuel thought about it. He will let his superior's nephew take the fall. He would let his own children burn. The snow thickened around us. Samuel's expression hardened. What do you need me to do? Drive the second vehicle. He stared at me. You said I would not be driving. That is not much comfort. The second vehicle has new brakes. I checked. You checked? I felt the metal. Samuel stopped asking. We walked to the vehicle yard. 3 fuel trucks waited beneath the lamps. Henry stood beside the first, wearing his recovered field jacket and pretending he understood the paperwork. Raymond saw me before anyone else did. His face changed. What are you doing here? I looked at the convoy, watching. He grabbed my elbow, then remembered the water. His hand stopped in midair. You need to leave, so does the fuel. His eyes sharpened. You know nothing about this operation. I know Lieutenant Dane is driving the lead vehicle. Raymond turned. Henry waved the authorization. My uncle assigned me. Raymond snatched the paper. He read it. I watched every calculation cross his face. The forged signature, the official stamp, the inspection deadline, Henry's presence. Samuel standing beside the second truck. Raymond understood the trap, but not who had built it. He tore the paper in half. This order is invalid. Henry's pride ignited. You are not my commander. My uncle outranks you. Your uncle is not here. A black sedan entered the yard. Major Philip Dane stepped out. He saw Henry beside the truck and stopped. What is this? Henry smiled with relief. You assigned me? Dane looked at the torn authorization in Raymond's hand. I did no such thing. The yard fell silent. Then headlights appeared beyond the gate. Not one vehicle, 4. Military police. General Reed's inspection team had arrived early. Raymond looked at me. For the first time, I saw naked fear. I smiled. The first truck's engine rumbled beneath the falling snow. And inside its cab, hidden beneath Henry's seat, Samuel had already placed a copy of Raymond's ledger. The inspection vehicles entered the yard in a line, tires grinding over frozen gravel. General Thomas Reed stepped out of the first sedan. He was taller than I remembered, with iron gray hair beneath his service cap and a face built from hard angles. Two military police officers followed him. Behind them came an auditor carrying a locked document case and Captain Miriam Shaw, the district logistics inspector. Major Dane moved first. "General Reed," he said, forcing a smile. "We were not expecting you until morning." That was the point. Reed's eyes traveled across the three fuel trucks, then stopped on Henry. "Why is your nephew wearing a field jacket beside an unauthorized convoy?" Dane looked at the torn route form in Raymond's hand. "He claims someone issued him orders." Henry stepped forward. "You issued them. I did not. It has your signature." It had a forgery. Henry's face flushed. Raymond folded the torn pieces into his fist. "Sir, this appears to be a misunderstanding." General Reed looked at him. "Then explain it clearly, Colonel Carter." Raymond was not yet a colonel in official rank, though everyone in the family called him one, as if ambition could become fact through repetition. He was a captain acting above his station, protected by Major Dane, and certain promotion was only months away. Reed knew exactly what he was. "Captain Carter," he corrected. The single word cut deeper than a reprimand. Raymond straightened. The convoy was scheduled for a routine transfer. Captain Shaw opened her folder. "No transfer appears on the district manifest." The paperwork was being finalized. After the trucks were loaded, Raymond's jaw tightened. Major Dane interrupted. "The shipment was authorized locally due to storage limitations." Reed turned toward him. "By whom?" Dane hesitated. Henry stared at his uncle. "You just said you issued no order." "I did not assign you." "But you authorized the shipment?" Dane's face darkened. "Be quiet." That was the first fracture. Small, audible. Everyone in the yard heard it. General Reed gestured toward the trucks. "Open them." Major Dane stepped forward. "Sir, the fuel is sealed for transport." "Then unseal it." Two military police officers climbed onto the first truck. Raymond looked toward me. Snow collected on his hair and shoulders. Beneath his control, panic moved like an animal searching for a door. He knew the ledger might be inside the cab. He did not know where. He also knew stopping the search would make him look guilty. That was the beauty of a proper trap. Every escape had to resemble confession. The first officer opened the hatch and lowered a measuring rod. Captain Shaw checked the level against the inventory sheet. Her expression changed. "This truck contains nearly 800 gallons. The manifest clerk beside her scanned his papers. "The depot record shows 300. General Reed looked at Major Dane. "Where did the other 500 come from?" Dane's face remained still. "I would need to review the loading records." Samuel stood near the second truck with his hands at his sides. He did not look at me. Good. Fear was convincing only when a man did not have to perform it. The second officer opened the cab of the lead vehicle. Henry shifted. "What are you looking for?" "Route documents." "I have the authorization." "You had a torn paper." The officer searched beneath the dashboard, then beneath the passenger seat. Raymond took half a step forward. I felt the iron buckle of his belt pull toward me as his body moved. I could have stopped him with one finger. I did not need to. General Reed noticed. "Stay where you are, Captain." Raymond froze. The officer reached beneath the driver's seat. He drew out a folded packet. Samuel had wrapped the copied ledger pages in brown paper and tied them with depot string. The officer opened it. His eyes moved across the first page. Then the second. He looked at Raymond. Sir General Reed held out his hand. The packet passed to him. Silence spread across the yard. Reed read slowly. Fuel quantities. Payments. Names. His face revealed nothing until he reached the entry beside Samuel's route. "Captain Carter," he said. Raymond looked at the page. "No." I almost smiled. The copied ledger was in my handwriting. The figures were exact. The structure was exact. But Raymond could deny the hand. I had expected him to. Captain Shaw stepped closer. "Several entries correspond to actual depot shortages." "That does not make the document authentic," Raymond said quickly. "Someone constructed it from known discrepancies." "Who would have access to those discrepancies?" "The inventory staff." Sergeant Owen Mercer stood near the warehouse door. Until that moment, he had tried to become part of the wall. Now every head turned toward him. Raymond had chosen the weakest rung. Mercer's face drained. "I did not write that." Raymond looked at him. "I named no one. You looked at me. Because you maintain inventory records." Mercer's mouth opened. Major Dane cut him off. "No one speaks without counsel." General Reed folded the pages. "This is a military inspection, not a courtroom." "It is becoming one," Dane said, a dangerous line. Reed's gaze hardened. "Search all three vehicles. Seal the depot. No one leaves." The military police moved at once. Raymond stepped toward General Reed. "Sir, my wife should not be here." Reed glanced at me for the first time. "Mrs. Carter?" "Yes." "What is your connection to this convoy?" Raymond answered before I could. She has been unwell, the familiar weapon, not angry, not informed. Unwell, a difficult wife could be dismissed more easily than a truthful one. I looked at Reed. My connection is that my husband ordered his driver onto a route where the brakes had been deliberately weakened. The yard went still. Samuel's head lifted. Raymond's face twisted. That is a lie. General Reed turned to Samuel. Private Brooks? Samuel stepped forward. Sir, Captain Carter assigned me to the northern route. Were you aware of brake problems? No, sir. Have the brakes been inspected? Yes, sir. By Captain Grant's maintenance section. Captain Lewis Grant was not in the yard. He was supposed to be. His absence became visible. Captain Shaw closed her folder. Where is Grant? Sergeant Mercer looked toward Major Dane. No one answered. Reed pointed to the lead truck. Inspect the brake system now. A mechanic crawled beneath the chassis with a lamp. Raymond looked at Samuel. There was murder in his eyes, not fear of exposure. Anger that his disposable man had failed to remain disposable. Samuel saw it. His shoulders straightened. The mechanic emerged after less than 2 minutes. The rear brake line has been cut and partially resealed. Henry backed away from the truck. You put me in that vehicle. Major Dane grabbed his arm. I did not assign you. Henry tore free. The authorization had your signature. By whom? No one answered. Henry looked at Raymond. You knew the brakes were damaged. Raymond stepped toward him. I knew nothing. You tried to stop me from driving. Because you had no authority. You were protecting me? I was protecting the convoy. Henry laughed once. It sounded close to hysteria. You would have let it leave anyway. General Reed watched them destroy each other. He did not interrupt. Men under pressure often supplied more truth than interrogation could extract. The mechanic held up the damaged section of brake line. The cut was made recently. Someone covered it with sealant so it would hold under light pressure and fail on the descent. Samuel stared at the metal. In my first life, that tiny cut had killed him. A few inches of rubber, a dab of sealant. A coffin. His face changed as the reality entered him fully. Raymond noticed. Private Brooks, he said. You had access to the vehicle. Samuel turned toward him, so did Captain Grant. Grant signed the inspection and you assigned the route. Raymond's voice sharpened. You are addressing a superior officer. Samuel's hands curled into fists. General Reed stepped between them without raising his voice. Tonight he is addressing an investigation. Major Dane turned toward the warehouse. We should review this inside. No, Reed said. We review it where the evidence was found. The second truck was opened. Its fuel level also exceeded the depot record. Then the third. More stolen fuel. Nearly 2,000 gallons in total. Walter Pike's trucks would be waiting beyond the northern pass to receive it. Pike would pay in cash. The officers would split the money. The depot would blame winter loss and inaccurate gauges. A simple operation. Profitable because everyone believed small theft disappeared inside large systems. But small theft became enormous when repeated. 5 gallons, 5,500. Then men began cutting brake lines to protect it. The auditor compared the ledger copy with the truck numbers. These entries predict the exact quantities found tonight. Raymond seized the opening. Because whoever wrote them helped load the trucks, his gaze went to Samuel. The accusation was obvious now. Samuel's face hardened. I was ordered away from the yard until an hour ago. Captain Grant. Convenient. Samuel reached inside his coat. Every weapon in the yard shifted toward him. He stopped. Permission to remove a document, sir? General Reed nodded. Samuel slowly produced folded copies of vehicle assignment records. I began copying these after Captain Carter changed my routes without explanation. Raymond stared. Samuel handed the papers to Captain Shaw. She read them under the yard light. These show repeated assignments of Private Brooks to unmanifested night transports, Samuel continued. Each time, Captain Grant told me the cargo was training equipment. I was ordered not to inspect the load. Raymond spoke through clenched teeth. You obeyed. Yes, sir. Until I learned you planned to kill me. You learned that from her. He pointed at me. There it was. The moment he made the investigation personal. The moment every officer present wondered why a husband feared his wife's knowledge. General Reed looked from Raymond to me. What exactly did Mrs. Carter tell you, Private? Samuel answered carefully. She warned me the brakes would fail on the northern route. When? Yesterday. The mechanic looked down at the severed line. Captain Shaw turned toward me. How could you know that before the inspection? I felt every eye in the yard. I could not tell them I had watched Samuel's coffin lowered into the ground in another life. I could not explain the hidden space. Not yet, so I gave them a truth they could understand. Because Raymond becomes predictable when he is afraid. Raymond laughed harshly. That is not evidence. The brake line is evidence. His face darkened. I continued. Samuel saw the fuel records. Raymond knew it. The northern pass has a steep descent, poor lighting, and a broken guardrail near the second bridge. A failed brake line would look like an accident. Captain Shaw's eyes narrowed. You know the route well. My husband spoke about it at home. I did not, Raymond said. You speak freely when you believe your wife is too foolish to understand. A few soldiers looked away to hide their reactions. Raymond's pride burned hotter than fear. That was his fatal weakness. He could have remained silent. Instead, he tried to humiliate me. You barely finished secondary school. I finished enough to count missing fuel. You know nothing about logistics. I know 3 trucks should not contain nearly 2,000 gallons more than the books show. You planted those papers. The accusation struck the yard like a bell. General Reed turned fully toward him. You believe your wife entered a secure depot, loaded excess fuel, forged a route authorization, sabotaged a brake line, and planted records beneath a seat? Raymond realized too late how absurd it sounded. She has help. From whom? He looked at Samuel. Then at me. Then at Henry. Every possible answer implicated someone he needed. I let him suffer in the silence. Major Dane stepped forward. This inspection has become disorderly. I recommend we suspend operations until counsel arrives. General Reed looked at him. I recommend you surrender your sidearm. Dane's face froze. On what authority? Mine. General Reed held up the forged route authorization. This carries a version of your signature. A forgery. Then someone with access to your office copied it. That narrows nothing. It narrows enough to justify detention. Dane's hand moved toward his holster. Not to draw, only by instinct, the military police raised their weapons. Henry stepped away from his uncle. Do not, he whispered. Dane slowly unfastened the holster and handed it over. Raymond watched his protector lose authority. I watched Raymond understand he was alone. Then a military jeep raced through the gate. It stopped hard beside the inspection vehicles. 2 officers climbed out with Captain Lewis Grant between them. Grant's lip was split. His uniform was muddy. One wrist was handcuffed to a leather dispatch case. Captain Shaw frowned. Where did you find him? At the Southern Rail Station, one officer said. He was attempting to board a civilian train. Grant looked at the trucks, then at Raymond, then at Major Dane. His shoulders collapsed. The weakest antagonist had arrived already broken. General Reed held up the damaged brake line. Did you inspect this vehicle? Grant said nothing. Your signature appears on the maintenance sheet. Still nothing. Major Dane's voice cut across the yard. Cap, say nothing. Grant laughed. Blood shone on his teeth. You told me the inspection was tomorrow. Dane's face became stone. Grant turned toward Raymond. And you said Brooks would be the only one in the cab. Samuel stepped forward. The military police blocked him. Raymond's composure shattered. He is lying. Grant stared at him. You watched me cut the line. I did not. You held the lamp. The words fell into complete silence. Raymond's face went gray. I had expected Grant to blame him eventually. I had not expected it so soon. Fear accelerated betrayal. That was useful knowledge. Raymond pointed toward Major Dane. He ordered the operation. Dane looked at him. The second fracture became a break. You incompetent fool. You approved every shipment. You kept the records. You took half. You stole half. Henry stared at his uncle. Samuel stared at Raymond. General Reed listened. The latter collapsed from the bottom upward. Captain Shaw opened her document case. Separate them. Military police took Grant first. Then Major Dane. When an officer reached for Raymond, he pulled away. My wife orchestrated this. I met his eyes. Yes. Everyone turned toward me. Raymond looked almost relieved that I had admitted it. Then I finished. I orchestrated your arrival at the truth. You orchestrated everything else. His relief vanished. The officer took his arm. Raymond resisted, not enough to escape. Enough to lose dignity. His boots slipped on the snow. One knee struck the gravel. The same knee he had pressed between my shoulder blades while my children burned. For 1 second, the yard disappeared. I saw the shed, the red coat, the flames. I heard Daniel. My power surged. The earth beneath Raymond trembled. A crack split the frozen gravel beside his hand. Every lamp in the yard flickered. Wind circled the trucks. Snow rose from the ground in a white spiral. Soldiers shouted. The military police reached for weapons. I closed my eyes. Water, calm. I thought of Lily sleeping in the hidden farmhouse. Daniel's hand over her shoulder. The wind lowered. The earth stilled. The lights stopped flickering. When I opened my eyes, General Reed was watching me. Not with disbelief, with recognition. He had seen something similar before. That surprised me. But I had no time to pursue it. Raymond stood again between 2 officers. He looked at the crack in the ground, then at me. You are doing this. I stepped closer. The police did not stop me. You told me I could not survive without you. His face tightened. Evelyn, tonight, you learned the difference between being needed and being tolerated. He lowered his voice. We have children. The cruelest men always remembered family when consequences arrived. Yes, you will ruin their father. They will be ashamed. They will be alive. He flinched, only slightly. But he heard the hidden meaning, the shed, the fire. The warning he did not understand. I leaned close enough that only he could hear. You should have accepted the divorce. Then your career might have lived. The words returned to him transformed. In my first life, he had blamed me for our children's deaths. In this one, I gave him ownership of his ruin. The military police led him away. His boots dragged through the snow. He looked back once. Not with regret, with hatred. Good. Hatred made men careless. General Reed ordered the convoy sealed and the depot placed under armed guard. Captain Shaw began collecting statements. Samuel was taken aside as a witness rather than a suspect. Henry sat on an overturned crate with both hands over his face. Major Dane said nothing after Raymond betrayed him. Captain Grant would not stop talking. He named Walter Pike, Frank Nolan. Sergeant Mercer, 2 warehouse clerks, a bank manager. The investigation grew teeth, but I knew it was not finished. Walter Pike was still outside the compound. Vivian still had access to medical records and officer correspondence. Frank Nolan knew I had visited the Falcon. And Raymond had prepared unsigned reports that could redirect blame. The first wave had struck. The larger enemies were already moving. General Reed approached me while the others were occupied. Up close, he looked exhausted. A faint tremor moved through his left hand. In my first life, I had learned that his wife's illness worsened his heart condition. He concealed the symptoms because he feared forced retirement. Tonight, his skin carried a gray undertone. His pulse beat irregularly beneath the artery in his neck. Water inside his body moved unevenly. The elements showed me damage before his face did. You knew the ground would split, he said. It was not a question. No. I looked toward the soldiers. Would you believe me if I said yes? I have served in places where belief was less useful than observation. He removed one glove. A pale scar crossed his palm in the shape of branching lightning. My breath stopped. The scar pulsed with faint elemental energy. Not mine. Older. General Reed closed his hand. You are not the first person I have seen move the world without touching it. A new open door appeared before me. In my first life, I had known Reed only as a commander. Now he carried evidence that my powers belonged to something larger. Who was the first? My wife. I stared at him. Eleanor Reed. The woman who would suffer a heart attack next winter. The woman I knew how to save. What can she do? Not here. He glanced toward the inspection team. Tomorrow morning, come to my residence. Why? Because what happened tonight will not remain secret. The truth landed heavily. Too many witnesses had seen the snow rise. Too many had watched the earth crack. Rumors would travel beyond the compound. Margaret would call it witchcraft. Raymond would call it instability. Major Dane would call it evidence of sabotage. Other people might call it opportunity. General Reed continued. There are offices inside the government that collect unusual reports. Collect people too? His silence answered. I thought of Daniel and Lily. No institution would study them. No officer would claim them. No scientist would place a needle near them. I stepped closer. If anyone comes for my children, I will bring down more than a depot. Reed's expression did not change. I believe you. Then tell me how to keep them hidden. Come tomorrow. He started to turn. I touched his wrist. His pulse jumped beneath my fingers. Pain flashed across his face. You need a doctor. I am fine. No, he tried to pull away. I held him lightly and reached for the water in his blood. The rhythm stuttered. One chamber strained. Pressure climbed where it should have released. I drew warmth into my palm and let it move through his wrist in a narrow current. Reed inhaled sharply. The grayness in his face eased. His heartbeat steadied. He stared at me. What did you do? Bought your attention. You already had it. Then consider it a warning. Your heart will fail if you continue ignoring it. His eyes narrowed. How long? Months. Perhaps less. You can see that? I can feel it. He pulled his glove back on. My wife will want to meet you. I thought this was about keeping me hidden. It is. That does not sound convincing. For the first time, his face softened. Eleanor has spent 20 years learning how to survive being noticed. He walked away. I stood beneath the falling snow and watched the inspection yard transform into a crime scene. Samuel approached after giving his statement. They are releasing me. You are a witness. For now. He looked toward the vehicle carrying Raymond. I keep thinking about the brake line. So do I. He watched. Grant cut it. Yes. I drove his children. Yes. I delivered food to his home. Yes. Samuel's eyes burned. How could a man do that? By deciding everyone else is less real than he is. The answer came too easily. I had spent an entire life studying Raymond's cruelty. Samuel looked at me. What happens to him? Tonight? Detention. And after? That depends on how much of the network they prove. You have the original ledger. I held his gaze. Yes. Are you giving it to General Reed? Not yet. He frowned. Why? Because Raymond is still useful. Samuel stared at me as if I had spoken madness. He tried to kill me, and now he is frightened. Frightened men bargain. You want him to expose the others. I want him to believe exposure will save him. Samuel looked toward the departing inspection vehicles. Will it? No. That answer satisfied something dark inside him. We walked back to my building near midnight. Every window seemed awake. Neighbors watched through curtains. By morning, the compound would know Raymond had been taken away in handcuffs. Margaret would come. Patricia would accuse me. Vivian would either flee or attack. I expected all three. What I did not expect was to find my apartment door open. The lock hung broken from the frame. Samuel stepped in front of me. I moved him aside. The room had been searched. Cabinets emptied. Dishes broken. The pantry door torn from its hinges. On the table lay Daniel's wooden horse. Its repaired wheel had been snapped away. My blood went cold. I reached for the hidden space. Two warm lights answered. Daniel and Lily were safe in the farmhouse. I could breathe. Samuel searched the bedroom. I touched the floor. Dust. Boot prints. 3 people, one heavy, one narrow-heeled, one limping slightly. Margaret, Patricia, Vivian, they had come together. A smell lingered near the stove. Rose and amber, Vivian's perfume. On the wall above the children's bed, someone had written a message in red lipstick. You cannot hide them forever. Samuel read it. His face tightened. Do they know where the children are? No. Then why write this? To make me afraid. Did it work? I looked at the broken horse. Fire gathered in my chest. The iron stove began to glow. The broken dishes trembled. Wind screamed beneath the door. I closed my hand. Everything stopped. No, I said. It made me precise. I picked up the wooden horse and placed it inside my coat. Then I walked to Raymond's desk. The bottom drawer had been forced open. They had taken his private correspondence. Good. Vivian was destroying evidence. That meant she believed the investigation would reach her. Fear had pushed her into motion, moving enemies left tracks. I opened the hidden space and removed one of Raymond's unsigned reports. The report accused Major Dane of directing the fuel theft through Walter Pike. It also named a warehouse near the Northern Railway. Vivian knew the warehouse. She would go there to retrieve money and documents before the military police did. Walter Pike would go there to protect his operation. Frank Nolan would go because Pike ordered him. 3 remaining enemies, 1 location. Samuel read the report over my shoulder. You think they are heading there? Yes, we should tell General Reed. We will. After what? After they gather everything we need in one room. He looked at me uneasily. You are setting another trap. No. I folded the report. This one already exists. I am only closing the door. A soft cry came from inside the hidden space. Lily had awakened. I entered at once. She stood beside the farmhouse bed, rubbing her eyes. Daniel sat near the window, watching the golden field. Mama, Lily said. I lifted her. Is Papa home? No. Did you make him say sorry? I held Lily against my chest. No. Daniel looked disappointed. Then he saw the broken wooden horse in my hand. His face fell. Who did that? I sat beside him, someone angry. Can you fix it? I touched the snapped wood. Earth answered faintly through the grain. The fibers drew together, not perfectly. A thin line remained where it had broken. Then the missing wheel reshaped beneath my fingers, formed from a small piece of wood taken from the farmhouse table. I attached it. Daniel rolled the horse across the windowsill. It moved smoothly. His smile returned. I watched him play. Things repaired were not always unchanged. Sometimes the line remained. Sometimes it should. A scar was proof that destruction had failed. I kissed his forehead. Stay here with Lily until I return. Where are you going? To make sure no one breaks your things again. Samuel and I left before dawn. We stopped first at General Reed's residence. He was awake, so was Eleanor. She opened the door herself. Eleanor Reed was a slender woman in her late 40s, dressed in a dark robe with silver hair loose around her shoulders. The moment she saw me, every candle in the hall flared blue. Samuel stepped back. Eleanor smiled. So, she said, the storm finally found a body. General Reed appeared behind her. I held out Raymond's report. Walter Pike's warehouse. Northern Railway. Vivian Hale may be there now. Reed read the first page. His face hardened. I will send military police. Send them quietly. Why? Because Pike will burn everything if he sees uniforms. Eleanor looked at me. And you plan to enter first. Yes, Samuel spoke. We plan to observe. I looked at him. He corrected himself. She plans to enter. I plan to stop her from being killed. Eleanor's smile deepened. Loyal already. Samuel flushed. General Reed folded the report. You are not trained. I survived Raymond. That is not training. It was 7 years of field experience. He did not understand the number. Eleanor did. Her eyes sharpened. Thomas, she said, give her 10 minutes. No. 5. No. I stepped closer. Your officers will find empty shelves and ashes unless someone gets inside before Pike knows the warehouse is exposed. Reed looked at the report. Then at Eleanor, she nodded once. He exhaled. 5 minutes. No more. I turned toward the door. Eleanor caught my hand. Blue fire moved between our palms. Not hot, cold enough to ache. A vision flashed, the warehouse, crates. Vivian in her red coat. Frank Nolan holding a pistol, Walter Pike beside a steel drum. A match in his hand. Then another image. A child's shoe beneath a table. Small yellow, Lily's shoe. The vision vanished. I tore my hand. Eleanor swayed. General Reed caught her. I could barely speak, my daughter. But she is safe, Samuel said. She was. I could feel her warm light inside the hidden space. Yet the vision had shown her shoe. A warning, a symbol, or a future that could still change. Eleanor gripped my wrist. Pike has something that belonged to your family. What? I do not know. The blue flames died. General Reed reached for the telephone. I am sending the unit now. I was already moving. The Northern Railway warehouse stood beyond the town limits, surrounded by abandoned freight cars and stacks of frozen pork. Smoke rose from one chimney. Samuel parked behind a line of derelict coal wagons. We crossed the tracks on foot. Voices carried through the warehouse wall. Walter Pike. Vivian. All three. I pressed my palm against the brick. Earth mapped the foundation. Metal revealed every nail, hinge, pipe, and weapon. Water showed 3 warm bodies inside, then a 4th. Small, motionless, my heart stopped. The hidden space still held Daniel and Lily, both alive, both safe. So who was the child? I reached deeper, a heartbeat. Weak, a girl, perhaps 6 years old. Samuel whispered, there is a child inside. He went pale. Why? I remembered Walter Pike's business, loans, threats, collection, families who could not pay. The child might be leverage or cargo. My anger became cold. Inside, Vivian shouted, you promised the money would be here, Pike answered. You promised Carter would keep the army away. He was arrested. Then he failed. He kept documents. So did I. Frank Nolan's voice cut in. We burn the books and leave. Vivian said, not until I have my share. You think you still have a share? A slap cracked inside. Vivian cried out. Samuel reached for the door. I stopped him. Wait. Metal moved within the warehouse. Pike had lifted the steel drum lid. The smell of gasoline seeped through the wall. Eleanor's vision. A match, the child. 5 minutes had become seconds. I placed both palms against the brick. Earth answered. The mortar loosened. One section of wall folded inward without collapsing. Each brick sliding aside as if an invisible hand had opened a mouth. Samuel stared. I stepped through. Frank Nolan turned first. His pistol came up. I moved the air. The gunshot exploded. The bullet curved past my face and buried itself in a timber post. Nolan fired again. The second bullet stopped in front of my chest. It hovered, flattened, dropped. No one moved. Walter Pike stood beside the open fuel drum with a lit match between his fingers. Vivian crouched near a table, blood on her lip. In the far corner, a little girl was tied to a chair. One yellow shoe lay beneath her feet. Pike stared at me. What the hell are you? I looked at the match. The flame bent away from the gasoline. Then it left the wood completely and floated into my palm. I am the woman whose family you threatened. Vivian's face went white. Evelyn. I closed my fingers around the flame. Darkness swallowed half the warehouse. Then every steel door slammed shut. The first antagonist had fallen in the inspection yard. The next 3 were now locked inside with me. Walter Pike dropped the match. It never reached the floor. The tiny flame twisted in the air, stretched into a thin ribbon, and vanished into my palm. Darkness swallowed the center of the warehouse. Frank Nolan fired again. I felt the bullet before the sound reached me. Metal tore through the air, hot and spinning. I pulled at the iron inside it. The shot veered sideways and struck a hanging chain. Sparks burst across the rafters. Samuel came through the opening in the wall and tackled Nolan from behind. They crashed into a stack of crates. The pistol slid across the concrete. Vivian lunged for it. I lifted one hand. The floor beneath her rose. A ridge of concrete caught her ankle and threw her forward. She struck the ground hard enough to split her lip again. Pike backed toward the steel drum. You do not know who you are dealing with. I know exactly who you are. He reached inside his coat. A knife flashed, not aimed at me, at the child. He seized the little girl by the hair and pressed the blade beneath her chin. "Open the doors," the girl whimpered. She was small, thin, and dressed in a brown wool coat 2 sizes too large. One yellow shoe remained on her foot. The other lay beneath the chair exactly as Eleanor had seen. Pike dragged the blade across her skin just enough to raise a red line. My power surged, the warehouse walls groaned. He shouted, "Open them!" I looked at the child. Her eyes were green, familiar, not because I knew her, because I knew someone with the same eyes. General Reed. The realization struck me. This was not a debtor's child. This was family. "Your name is Grace," I said. The girl stared at me. "How do you know that?" I did not. Not fully. But Eleanor's vision had brought us here. General Reed had spoken about offices that collected unusual people. A child hidden inside Pike's warehouse had to be connected to something larger than stolen fuel. The girl swallowed. "My name is Grace Reed." Samuel stopped struggling with Nolan for half a second. Pike smiled. "Now you understand. General Reed's granddaughter. A pressure point against a commander. A child used as leverage in the same network that stole fuel and killed witnesses. The operation was larger than corruption. It had already become war." Pike pressed the knife closer, opened the doors, and stepped back. I lifted both hands. The metal locks released. One warehouse door rolled upward 6 inches. Cold air cut across the floor. Pike moved toward it with Grace pinned against his chest. More, the door rose another foot. Nolan drove his elbow into Samuel's ribs and broke free. He ran for the pistol. I did not look at him. The pistol rose from the floor before his hand reached it. It turned in the air. The barrel pointed directly at his face. Nolan froze. Samuel struck him behind the knee and forced him down. Vivian crawled beneath the table. I heard paper rustling. She had found the documents. Good. Let her hold them. Let every witness see what she believed worth saving. Pike dragged Grace toward the opening. I focused on the blade, steel. Carbon. Heat from his hand, the knife trembled. He clenched harder. "What are you doing?" "Taking away your courage." The blade twisted, not enough to cut Grace. Enough to tear free from Pike's grip. It flew across the warehouse and buried itself in a timber beam. Grace dropped to the floor. Pike reached for her. The concrete split between them. A narrow trench opened at his feet. He fell to one knee. I pulled Grace toward me with a gust of air. Her chair scraped across the floor, stopped beside my legs, and tipped gently into my arms. She shook so violently that her teeth clicked. I broke the ropes with heat. "Can you stand?" She nodded, though she could not. Samuel dragged Nolan toward us. "Take her outside," I said. He looked at Pike. "You need help." "I need a witness alive." Samuel hesitated. Then he lifted Grace and carried her through the broken wall. Pike pushed himself upright. His confidence had vanished. Only rage remained. "You think saving one child changes anything?" "No." I walked toward him. "Destroying you changes something." He grabbed a steel pipe from beside the fuel drum and swung. I raised my arm. The pipe stopped against an invisible wall of compressed air. Pike strained. The metal bent around my forearm without touching me. His face emptied. I closed my fingers. The pipe folded in half. He released it. I stepped closer. "You lent money to soldiers' families." He backed away. "You threatened their children." Another step. "You used their debts to force drivers onto illegal routes." His heel struck the fuel drum. "You bought stolen military supplies." He reached behind him. His hand found the edge of the drum. "And when men saw too much, you called their deaths accidents." Pike grabbed the drum and shoved. Hundreds of pounds of fuel tilted toward me. I placed my palm against the air. The drum stopped. Liquid slammed against the steel walls from inside. Water obeyed me most easily when I was calm. Fuel was different. Oil resisted. It was earth transformed by time and pressure, thick with ancient death. But it still remembered where it came from. I reached deeper. The gasoline separated inside the drum. Lighter compounds rose, heavier ones sank. The pressure changed. The steel groaned. Pike stared at it. Then the lid exploded upward. A column of fuel shot into the air. I turned it before it could spread. The liquid twisted around Pike in a shining spiral. It coated his coat, his face. He screamed and covered his eyes. I caught the lantern flame from the wall. It drifted toward him. Pike stopped screaming. Every drop of blood left his face. The flame hovered inches from his chest. He smelled like gasoline and terror. Vivian crawled from beneath the table, clutching a leather folder. "Evelyn, stop." I looked at her. She had forgotten to hide her fear behind beauty. Her hair had fallen loose. Blood streaked her chin. Her red coat was covered in dust. "What is in the folder?" "Nothing." The folder's metal clasp answered me. Paper inside. A small key and a thin glass vial. Vivian saw my attention shift. She ran. The east door remained locked. She pulled at the handle. The steel refused to move. "Open it." No, I did not kidnap that child. No. You only helped the men who did. I did not know. You always say that after the damage is done, she turned. I can help you. Pike laughed despite the flame hovering near his body. She will help herself. Vivian looked at him with hatred. Shut up. He smiled through gasoline. You think Carter loved you? He planned to trade you the moment the inspection started. Vivian's face changed. Pike continued. He prepared statements naming you as the messenger. I already knew, but Vivian did not. Her grip tightened around the folder. He would not. He named the guest house, the letters, the bank account, everything. He said we would leave together. Pike laughed again. Men like Carter do not leave with witnesses. The truth struck her harder because it came from someone cruel enough to recognize cruelty. She looked at me. Yes. Her lips parted. I removed one of Raymond's unsigned reports from my coat and threw it across the floor. It slid to her boots. She opened it. Raymond's handwriting filled the page. Vivian Hale transported payments. Vivian Hale arranged meetings. Vivian Hale created forged medical records. Vivian Hale acted without my full knowledge. He had written her guilt carefully, enough to sound loyal, enough to save himself. Vivian read every line. Her face became still. The same stillness I had worn after returning from death. But Vivian's stillness held no remorse, only betrayal. How long have you had this? Long enough. You could have shown me. Why would I warn you? Her eyes lifted. Because we want the same thing. No, we both want Raymond destroyed. I want my children protected. Raymond's destruction is only part of that. She took one step toward me. I know where he keeps the original account records. So do I. I know Major Dane's private contacts. So do I. I know who paid for the fire. The warehouse disappeared. Only her face remained. What fire? Vivian stopped. She had spoken too quickly. Pike looked between us. Nolan, still pinned near the crates, went motionless. Vivian's eyes flickered. I crossed the distance between us before she could retreat. The air struck her against the door. Her head hit steel. I pressed my forearm beneath her throat. What fire? She clawed at my sleeve. I misspoke. The metal door behind her began to glow. Heat spread around her head. What fire? Her breath broke. Let me answer me. Pike watched. Nolan watched. Even the warehouse seemed to listen. Vivian's voice became thin. The Carter farm, my father's farm. The property sold after his death. The land I believed lost through debt. What happened there? She squeezed her eyes shut. Raymond needed the land. Why? I do not know. The door behind her grew hotter. She cried out, all right. I loosened my arm enough for her to breathe. She spoke quickly. Your father refused to sign a mineral lease. Raymond learned there was something beneath the south field. He arranged the barn fire to force the sale. My stomach turned. My father had died 2 months after that fire, officially from smoke damage and heart failure. Raymond had comforted me at the funeral. He had held Daniel while I cried. What was beneath the field I do not know. Major Dane knew. Raymond only said it was worth more than the fuel operation. Pike answered from behind me. Not oil, I turned. The flame still hovered near his chest. He looked at it and swallowed. What was it? Rare earth ore. The words meant little to most people then, but I remembered the future. Electronic systems. Industrial magnets. The land would become priceless, Pike continued. Dane found an old geological survey. Carter married you before the lease expired. The truth rearranged my entire marriage. Raymond had not chosen me despite my farm background. He had chosen me because of it. My father's land, my inheritance, my name on the deed. Our children had tied him to the property. Vivian had not simply replaced a wife. She had waited until Raymond no longer needed my signature. Cold moved through me. The river inside my hidden space surged. The farmhouse windows rattled though I was not there. Daniel and Lily's warm lights flickered with unease. I forced calm into the bond. Safe. Stay safe. Vivian watched my face. You did not know. No, he never loved you. The sentence was meant to wound. Instead, it clarified. I know, she stared. Cruelty lost power when it arrived after acceptance. I released her. She slid down the door, coughing. Give me the folder. She held it against her chest. What do I get? Breathing. Her eyes hardened. You need me. No, you need testimony. I have documents. Documents can be called forged. I have witnesses. Pike will lie. Nolan will lie. Raymond will blame everyone. Major Dane will protect himself. She was right. I hated that. Vivian saw it. I can connect them. What do you want? Protection. From prison? From Raymond. He is in custody. You do not know him as well as you think. I know him better than you ever did. No. Her voice dropped. You know the man he became at home. I know what he serves. The word stopped me. Serves? Vivian looked toward Pike. He stared at the floor. Nolan stopped struggling. Fear moved through all three. Not fear of Reed. Something else. What does Raymond serve? Vivian held the folder tighter. Get me out of here, you answer first. No. I reached for the clasp. The folder tore from her hands and flew into mine. She lunged. I raised a wall of air. She struck it and fell back. I opened the folder. Photographs, a list of names, bank records, a map of 3 military installations, and the glass vial. The liquid inside was clear with a faint blue shimmer. Elemental energy pulsed through it. The same cold sensation I had felt in Eleanor's flame. I held it toward the light. What is this? No one answered. I turned toward Pike. The flame moved closer to his coat. He whispered, a sample. Of what? Something from beneath the Carter farm. My grip tightened. The vial vibrated. Earth, water, fire. Not separate, bound together, concentrated. My power recognized it like blood. Vivian watched me. That is why Raymond chose you. I looked at her. He knew? Not at first. Dane told him your family carried unusual traits. My pulse slowed. My father had survived burns no doctor expected him to survive. My mother could predict storms before clouds formed. I had always called them family stories, not powers. Traits, blood, the land and my family were connected. Raymond married me for access to both. Then Daniel and Lily were born. They had inherited something. That was why Vivian called them problems. Not because they were weak. Because they might become powerful. The burning shed in my first life had not only erased witnesses to Raymond's affair, it had erased children someone feared. I closed my fingers around the vial. The glass cracked. Energy rushed into my palm. The warehouse vanished beneath a wave of sensation. I felt stone miles below the earth. Water moving through buried channels, metal sleeping inside rock. Heat trapped beneath pressure. Then another presence, a pulse. Ancient awake, the vial shattered. Blue light spread through my veins. Every nail in the warehouse ripped free from the walls. Chains rose from the floor. The steel drums trembled. Windows exploded outward. Pike screamed. Vivian covered her face. Nolan crawled beneath a crate. The elements did not feel obedient anymore. They felt hungry. The power in the sample magnified everything I carried. My anger became fire. My fear became wind. My grief became water. My need to protect became earth. The warehouse foundation cracked. A support beam bent. The roof groaned. Samuel shouted from outside. Evelyn, Grace cried. Their voices pulled me back. I forced the energy downward, into the ground. The concrete split beneath my feet. Blue light poured into the cracks and disappeared. The building steadied. I opened my eyes. Pike was on his knees. The gasoline spiral around him had collapsed into a pool, but no flame touched it. Vivian stared at me with open terror. What did you do? I learned why you were afraid of my children. She shook her head. I was not. You mentioned Lily becoming sick. Her face froze. Pike looked at her. Nolan looked up. Vivian said nothing. I walked toward her. You changed her medicine. No. The letters prove you knew she was ill. That proves nothing. You wrote that nature might solve the problem. Her breath quickened. I was angry. You poisoned a 2-year-old. I did not. I raised my hand. Water condensed from the warehouse air. It formed a clear sphere. Inside it, the blue residue from the broken vial swirled like smoke. The elemental energy sharpened my senses. Vivian's blood moved faster. Her skin temperature rose. Her pupils shifted before each lie. I could feel deception physically now. Did you poison Lily? No. The water sphere turned dark. Her body betrayed her. Pike whispered. What is that truth? I asked again. Did you poison my daughter? Vivian's voice cracked. I only changed the dose. The world went quiet. She continued quickly. Raymond said the child's illness would pressure you to sign the property papers. My hands went cold. He told you to do it? He said she would recover. Did he give you the medicine? Yes. Did Major Dane know? I do not know. The sphere remained dark. Another lie. Did Dane know? Yes, the water cleared. There it was, a conspiracy against my child years before the fire, not impulse. Not jealousy, policy. I turned toward Pike. Who ordered Grace taken? The flame returned. It floated beside his face. His skin, the water stayed clear. Who? Why? To control Reed. Why now? The investigation. Who gave the order? Pike looked at Vivian. She looked away. I moved the flame closer. Who? Raymond. The answer struck even harder than I expected. Raymond had arranged the kidnapping before his arrest. He had prepared leverage against General Reed, a child for a career. He had learned nothing. He had simply chosen another family to threaten. Samuel entered through the broken wall carrying Grace. Behind him came military police. General Reed led them. He saw his granddaughter. Every line in his face broke at once. Grace, she reached for him. Samuel lowered her into his arms. Reed held her so tightly she cried, but she did not ask him to stop. Eleanor entered behind the officers. Blue flame moved around her hands. She saw the broken vial, then me. Her expression changed. What did you absorb? A sample from beneath my family's land. Eleanor crossed the room quickly. She touched my face. Cold fire moved through my skin. Her eyes closed, then opened. You should be dead. I have been. She stared at me. Before she could ask, Captain Shaw entered with 2 more officers. She surveyed Pike, Nolan, Vivian, the documents, the gasoline, and the damaged walls. What happened? I looked at the 3 enemies. Walter Pike kidnapped Grace Reed on Raymond Carter's order. Frank Nolson assisted the fuel theft operation. Vivian Hale carried evidence connected to both the depot and a mineral extraction conspiracy. Vivian stood abruptly. I am Coopere looked at her. You were found inside a locked warehouse with a kidnapped child. I came for documents. That is not better. Vivian pointed at me. She attacked us. Pike laughed bitterly. She stopped you from running. Viv, you held the child. At Carter's request, you agreed. So did you. The second wave began without my help. They accused each other rapidly. Nolan named Pike. Vivian named Raymond. Every sentence opened another door. Captain Shaw ordered the documents collected. When an officer reached for the folder in my hands, I removed the map and gave him the rest. He noticed. What did you keep? Something connected to my children. That is evidence. So are they. Captain Shaw stepped closer. Miss Carter. General Reed intervened. She keeps it. Sir, that is an order. The officer stepped back. Reed carried Grace outside. Eleanor remained beside me. The blue light beneath my skin had faded, but I could still feel the expanded power. The warehouse was no longer a collection of objects. It was a living map, every wire, every pipe, every footprint, every drop of blood. I sensed something beneath the concrete near Pike's desk. I walked toward it. Eleanor followed. What is there? The earth opened. A black case rose from beneath the floor. Pike's face collapsed. No, I opened it. Inside were photographs of children, medical reports, family names, military postings, notes describing unusual incidents, a boy who survived lightning, a girl who could find underground water, twins who never became cold. Daniel and Lily's names appeared on the final page. Daniel Carter. Observed temperature fluctuation during emotional distress. Lily Carter. Accelerated recovery after illness. My hands shook. They had been watched. Studied, measured. Pike said I only stored the files. I looked at him. Whom he said nothing. Eleanor took the page. Her face turned gray. I know this seal. A small black symbol appeared at the bottom of every report. A circle divided by 4 lines. Earth, air, fire, water. What is it? I asked. Eleanor looked toward the warehouse entrance, making sure Grace was outside. The Meridian office. General Reed had mentioned government offices that collected reports. This was one of them. They work for the military? Sometimes. That is not an answer. They work for whoever gives them access. I looked at Daniel and Lily's file. Did they order the fire? I do not know. Did they order my father's death? I do not know. Did they give Raymond the sample? Eleanor touched the black seal. They may have given Dane the survey. The sample could have come later. Pike spoke quickly. Dane received packages from Washington. Captain Shaw turned toward him. What packages? I never opened them. The water sphere near Vivian remained clear. Pike was telling the truth. Eleanor looked at me. This investigation is no longer safe. No, you do not understand. Fuel theft is corruption. Kidnapping is crime. The Meridian office is authority without a courtroom. Then I will give them one. You cannot fight an office you cannot find. I folded Daniel and Lily's reports. They found my children. The ground beneath us trembled. Eleanor felt it, so I will find them. Outside, engines approached, not military police. Heavier vehicles, black trucks without unit markings entered the warehouse yard. General Reed shouted an order. Soldiers raised weapons. Men in gray coats stepped down from the trucks. Each wore the black divided circle on one lapel. The Meridian office had arrived before anyone summoned it. Their leader was a woman with white gloves and silver hair. She looked through the broken wall directly at me. Then she smiled. Evelyn Carter, she called. You have something that belongs to us. I placed the children's files inside my coat. Fire gathered around my fingers. No, I said. You had something that belonged to me. The woman in white gloves walked through the broken wall, as if the armed soldiers were furniture. No one stopped her. That frightened me more than the trucks. General Reed stood with Grace behind him. His sidearm was drawn, but the barrel remained lowered. Captain Shaw's officers watched the newcomers with rigid uncertainty. Authority had entered the room wearing no visible rank. The silver-haired woman stopped 10 feet from me. Her face was smooth, almost gentle. She appeared to be in her early 50s, though the air around her carried the weight of something much older. My name is Dr. Helena Voss, she said. I direct regional operations for the Meridian office. I did not ask. Her smile remained. You absorbed an unstable elemental concentrate. You require treatment. I feel fine. That is temporary. Eleanor moved beside me. Do not touch her, Helena. Recognition flashed between them. Dr. Voss tilted her head. Eleanor Reed. Still hiding behind a general's uniform? Eleanor's blue fire brightened. Still dissecting children behind government seals? Grace pressed her face into General Reed's coat. The temperature inside the warehouse dropped. Voss looked toward the little girl. Grace was never intended to be harmed. General Reed raised his weapon. She was tied to a chair with a knife at her throat. By criminals acting outside our instructions. Walter Pike laughed from the floor. Every head turned toward him. He looked terrified, but terror had stripped away his caution. You gave Dane her file, he said. You told him Reed would obey if his bloodline was threatened. Voss did not look at Pike. That man is attempting to reduce his sentence. The water sphere near Vivian remained clear. Pike was telling the truth. I lifted one hand. The sphere floated between Voss and me. Say you did not authorize Grace's kidnapping. General Reed looked at the water. Voss studied it with interest. A crude autonomic response test, say it. I did not authorize Grace Reed's kidnapping. The water darkened until it looked like ink. Silence struck the warehouse. Captain Shaw slowly turned toward Voss. The Meridian agents moved their hands toward their coats. Military police raised their rifles. General Reed's voice became deadly calm. No one moves. Voss looked at the black water, then at me. You have developed quickly. You lie poorly. I lie when truth would produce disorder. You kidnapped a child. I preserved an essential program. Grace began to cry. Reed's pistol rose. Eleanor caught his wrist. Thomas. She used our granddaughter and she wants you angry. Voss smiled faintly. Eleanor always understood strategy. I felt the metal weapons around me. 20 rifles. 6 pistols, buckles. Vehicle engines outside. If fighting began, the warehouse would become a grave. Voss knew that. She had brought enough force to make resistance look irresponsible. Men like Raymond used family. People like Voss used consequences. Different, same cruelty. What do you want? I asked. The concentrate you absorbed. It is no longer in the vial. We know. Her gaze dropped to my hands. You will come with us voluntarily. Your children will be placed under protective observation. The ground trembled. Voss continued as though she had not felt it. Daniel and Lily possess rare expressions of the Carter line. With proper instruction, they could become extraordinary assets. They are not assets. They already are. The only question is who controls their development. No one controls them. Voss sighed. Every mother believes love exempts her children from history. Every monster calls ownership history. The smile disappeared. Her agent spread subtly through the warehouse. Eleanor whispered, there are more outside than you can feel. I feel them. Underground wires carried vibration from the yard. 32 agents, 4 drivers. 2 men on the roof. 1 person inside the rear truck whose heartbeat was faint and irregular. A prisoner. Or a patient. My awareness moved through the vehicles. Steel walls. Restraints, glass containers. Then a heartbeat I recognized. Raymond. They had brought him. Voss followed my gaze toward the trucks. You sense him. Why is my husband here? Captain Carter entered into a cooperation agreement. General Reed's face hardened. He was in military custody. National security supersedes district authority. Captain Shaw spoke. Under whose order? Voss removed a folded document from her coat. Shaw took it. Her expression changed as she read the signatures. The Meridian office had reached above Reed. Above the district. Perhaps above every lawful door I knew. Raymond had found a new protector. Of course he had. A frightened parasite did not develop honor. It found a larger host. Voss gestured toward the yard. He provided valuable information regarding the Carter property, your children, and your manifestations. He traded us. He described risks. He described targets. Voss looked almost sympathetic. He believes your powers have made you unstable. I laughed once. He watched a man cut Samuel's brake line. He disputes that account, Captain Grant confessed. Confessions under pressure are unreliable. Grace was found tied inside this warehouse. An unfortunate excess by intermediaries. Every crime disappeared inside her language. Kidnapping became excess. Murder became risk management. Children became assets. I understood then that exposing Voss with ordinary evidence would not be enough. She controlled the meaning of evidence. So I needed something she could not rename. Bring Raymond inside, I said. Voss studied me. Why? You want cooperation, Nation. You know he will lie. I want everyone else to hear it. General Reed looked at me. He understood. Voss did too. But she believed herself protected. That made her arrogant. She lifted one gloved hand. 2 agents went outside. They returned with Raymond between them. He wore no handcuffs. His uniform had been replaced by a gray civilian coat. Bruises marked one side of his face, but his posture was straighter than it had been in the inspection yard. He had already convinced himself he was recovering. Then he saw me. Fear crossed his face before hatred covered it. Evelyn. I looked at the man I had once begged to come home. In my first life, he had stood over me while our children burned. In this life, he had poisoned Lily, prepared Samuel's death, ordered Grace's kidnapping, and handed his own family to the Meridian office. There was nothing left to mourn. Tell them why you married me, I said. Raymond glanced at Voss. She gave no signal. Because I loved you. The water sphere turned black. Several soldiers shifted. I asked, did you know about the mineral survey beneath my father's farm? No, Black water. Did Major Dane tell you my family carried elemental traits? No, Black. Did you give Vivian medicine to alter Lily's dose? His eyes moved toward Vivian. She smiled with cold satisfaction. No, the sphere darkened further. Raymond's face tightened. This trick proves nothing, Captain Shaw said. Then tell the truth and watch it clear. He looked at her. Then at General Reed. Then at Voss. The allies he expected were becoming an audience, I continued. Did you order Samuel onto the northern route knowing the brakes had been cut? No. The water remained black. Samuel stepped forward. Raymond looked at him. You do not understand what was at stake. Samuel's voice shook. My life, the operation protected national interests. You were selling fuel to Walter Pike. That was cover. Pike barked a laugh. Cover for cash? Raymond turned on him. Voss's expression sharpened. Raymond heard his own mistake too late. I asked, did you order Grace Reed kidnapped? His mouth closed. The water waited. General Reed raised his pistol again. Raymond looked at Voss. Dr. Voss said the child would only be held temporarily. The warehouse erupted in voices. Grace cried out. Eleanor's fire struck the ceiling in a blue column. General Reed crossed the distance before anyone could stop him and drove Raymond against a steel post. You took my granddaughter? Raymond clawed at Reed's wrist. So did every coward at every atrocity. Voss spoke sharply. General, release him. Reed tightened his grip. Her agents raised weapons. Military police answered. I moved the metal. Every firearm in the warehouse locked. Triggers froze, slides jammed. Bolts refused to move. Men pulled uselessly at weapons that had become dead weight. Voss looked at me. That level of control should be impossible. You keep saying that. I lifted my hand. The warehouse doors opened. Wind rushed inside. The black Meridian trucks rocked on their suspensions. One rear door tore free and flew across the yard. Inside were restraints, medical equipment, and 6 children. They sat strapped to narrow metal seats, sedated heads hanging. Captain Shaw stared. General Reed released Raymond. Eleanor made a sound like an animal in pain. Voss's calm finally cracked. Those subjects are under legal protective custody. I walked toward the open yard. They are prisoners. They were removed from dangerous homes. You created the danger. Some families cannot manage manifested children. Then help the families. We help the future. I reached for the restraints inside the truck. Metal buckles opened simultaneously. Eleanor ran to the children with 2 military medics. One boy's skin sparked with weak electricity. A girl breathed frost into the summer air of the heated vehicle. Another child's hands were covered in stone, assets, reports, samples. The Meridian office had built an empire from stolen childhoods. Voss stepped toward me. You do not understand what happens when abilities emerge without structure. I understand what happens when power meets people without conscience. We prevented wars. You hid them. We contained disasters. You created obedience. Sometimes obedience is survival. For whom? She did not answer. The water sphere remained black. I turned to Captain Shaw. You have witnesses, documents, kidnapped children, and a confession from Raymond. Shaw looked at the order in her hand, then at the truck. The official paper trembled between her fingers. Dr. Voss, she said, I am placing you and your personnel under detention pending federal review. Voss almost smiled. You have no authority to detain me. Captain Shaw tore the order in half. I have enough authority to try. The Meridian agents moved, not toward their guns, toward small glass capsules hidden in their coat cuffs. Eleanor shouted, do not let them break those. I felt the liquid inside. Elemental concentrate, unstable. 32 agents carrying enough power to destroy the yard. Voss crushed her capsule first. Blue light burst around her. The concrete beneath her feet turned white with frost. Air collapsed inward. Every window shattered. Her silver hair rose around her face. The gentle official vanished. Something violent stood in her place. Containment is mercy, she said. Then she attacked. A blade of compressed air crossed the warehouse. I raised an earth wall. The force cut halfway through it. Agents broke their capsules outside. Fire climbed across the snow. Metal truck panels twisted like paper. A wave of water burst from underground pipes. Military police scattered. The battle became chaos. I felt every element at once. Too much. Too many wills. The concentrate inside my body answered them and tried to tear me apart from within. Pain split across my chest. Voss saw it. You absorbed raw convergence, she called. Your organs cannot hold it. She sent another air blade. I bent the steel support beam into its path. The beam snapped. The roof began to collapse. Children screamed inside the truck. I reached for earth and held the foundation. For air and slowed the falling roof. For metal and pulled broken beams aside. For water and smothered the spreading fire. 4 elements. My vision blurred. Blood ran from my nose. Voss walked toward me through the storm. You can fight or protect, she said. Not both. She was right. That was the trap. Every enemy I had faced believed my children made me weak because protection divided strength. But they misunderstood motherhood. Protection did not divide me. It multiplied purpose. I reached for the hidden space. The golden land opened inside my mind. The river surged. The black soil warmed. The orchard branches bent, though no wind blew there. I pulled. Not objects, not power. Water from the healing river poured through me. Earth from the endless fields anchored my bones. Air from the golden sky filled my lungs. Fire from the farmhouse stove settled inside my heart. The hidden world was not only refuge, it was my element. My 5th power, space, the warehouse froze around me. Not from cold, from stillness. Every flame stopped moving. Every droplet hung in the air. Every twisted piece of metal became motionless. Voss's next air blade remained suspended between us. Her eyes widened. What did you do? I chose both. I closed my hand. Every meridian capsule flew from its owner. Glass gathered above me in a glittering cloud. I separated the concentrate from the containers and drew it into a sphere. Raw power churned above the warehouse. Blue, red, silver. Black. Voss looked up. You cannot contain that. I am not going to. I opened a doorway beneath the sphere. The hidden space swallowed it. Inside, the power struck the river. Light exploded across the golden sky. The fields trembled. Then the world absorbed it. The meridian agents collapsed as borrowed strength left their bodies. Voss remained standing. She had carried power before the capsule. Cold spread from her feet. Frost climbed the walls. You think one victory ends us? No, you do not know our names. I have your files, fragments. I have your children. They are not mine. That is why you lose. She thrust both hands forward. Ice spears formed from moisture in the air. All aimed at me. Raymond moved behind Voss. For one foolish second I thought he might attack her. Instead he grabbed Grace, again. Always the nearest child, he pulled her against his body and seized a fallen knife. Stop! He shouted. Everyone stop. General Reed went still. Raymond pressed the blade to Grace's throat. I want a vehicle. The warehouse became silent except for crackling fire. Voss looked at him with contempt. You remain disappointingly predictable. Raymond's eyes were wild. You promised protection. You exposed operational details. I gave you Evelyn. You failed to deliver her. I gave you the children's files. You gave us information we already possessed. His face collapsed. He had betrayed everyone and still purchased nothing. I looked at him. You always believed another sacrifice would save you. Stay back, the fuel drivers. I said, stay back. Samuel. The knife shook. Your officers, Evelyn? His eyes flickered. Then Daniel's voice came from behind me. Papa? My heart stopped. Daniel stood in the broken warehouse entrance, holding Lily's hand. They should have been inside the hidden farmhouse. But the space had opened when I drew power through it. The children had followed the bond. Daniel looked at Raymond holding Grace. Confusion filled his face. Why are you hurting her? Raymond stared at our son. The scene from my first life rose around me, the shed, the fire, Daniel calling for me. This was the moment fate had tried to rebuild. A child, a weapon. But I was no longer pinned in the snow. Lily stepped forward. Her gray eyes glowed blue. Let her go. Raymond's hand began to tremble. Frost formed along the knife. Daniel's wooden horse slipped from his fingers and struck the ground. The earth answered him. A ridge rose beneath Raymond's boots. He lost balance. Grace dropped. General Reed pulled her away. The knife flew from Raymond's hand and landed at my feet. He stared at Daniel and Lily, not with love, with fear. His own children had become everything the Meridian office predicted. Everything he had tried to erase. Raymond backed toward the broken wall. We can still fix this. No one answered. Evelyn, tell them. Tell them what? That I am their father. Daniel spoke before I could. A father protects his children. Raymond flinched. The cruel truth came from a 4-year-old. Lily hid behind her brother. Raymond lowered his voice. I made mistakes. I walked toward him. You poisoned Lily. You tried to kill Samuel. Dane ordered it. You kidnapped Grace. Voss told me it was necessary. You gave our children to Meridian. I was trying to understand them. You burned my father's farm. His face changed. That was years ago. You burned our children. He went white. No one else understood, but he did. Somewhere inside him, the future I remembered touched the guilt he had not yet earned. You said if I accepted the divorce, they might have lived, I whispered. Raymond shook his head. I never said that, not in this life. Voss stared at me. Eleanor closed her eyes as if a final question had been answered. Raymond backed away. What are you? I looked at Daniel and Lily, alive, standing beneath an open sky. I am the consequence you received twice. He turned to run. The earth opened beneath him, not a grave. A shallow pit. He fell to his knees. The position matched the inspection yard. The position matched the snow outside the burning shed. I walked to the edge. He reached for me. Evelyn, please. In my first life, I had begged him. He had watched me crawl. Now he knelt before everyone he had betrayed. General Reed, Vivian, his children, his superiors, his enemies. No private mercy remained for him to manipulate. You once told me my children were weak, I said. His mouth opened. I leaned closer. They were never weak. They only had a weak father. I turned away. Military police pulled him from the pit. This time he did not resist. There was nowhere left to go. Voss tried to retreat during the distraction. Eleanor blocked her path. Blue fire circled both women. Voss looked at the rescued children, the captured agents, the destroyed trucks, and the soldiers who no longer feared her documents. You will regret dismantling Meridian, she said. Eleanor's expression became calm. We are not, smiled faintly. Then you have learned. We are exposing it. Captain Shaw held up the black case of children's files. Every name. General Reed added, every facility. Samuel looked at Pike and Nolan. Every buyer. Vivian stepped forward with Raymond's unsigned reports pressed against her chest, and every officer. Voss's face finally lost all certainty. An institution without secrecy was only a collection of criminals with stationery. Eleanor extinguished the blue fire. Military police took Voss away. Dawn arrived slowly. Federal investigators loyal to General Reed secured the warehouse before Meridian could send reinforcements. Captain Shaw transmitted copies of the files through 3 separate military channels. Charles Webb received an anonymous package containing evidence of the fuel network and child detention program. By noon, the story was too large to erase. Major Dane confessed after learning Raymond had named him. Captain Grant testified in exchange for protection. Sergeant Mercer surrendered the inventory books. Walter Pike revealed bank accounts, transport routes, and Meridian payments. Frank Nolan gave up every family he had threatened. Vivian testified against Raymond. She asked me for forgiveness once. I looked at her through the interview room glass. For which child? She received no forgiveness. Raymond lost his rank before sunset. His promotion vanished. His accounts were frozen. The military seized the money hidden through Vivian and Pike. The Carter family arrived at the compound demanding I save him. Margaret shouted that a wife stood beside her husband. I placed Raymond's confession on the table. A husband stands between danger and his children. She read the page naming Daniel and Lily as Meridian assets. Her face collapsed. Patricia blamed Vivian. Then Dane. Never Raymond. Some people protected lies because truth would require rebuilding their entire identity. I gave Margaret the household severance papers. Raymond had signed them under federal supervision. The marriage was over. She stared at my name. You will regret throwing away this family. I opened the apartment door. Behind me, Daniel fed Lily peach slices at the table. Samuel repaired the window frame. Eleanor sorted seeds for the hidden farm. General Reed waited outside with a deed in his hand. No, I said. I regretted keeping it. Margaret left without another word. The deed restored my father's land to me. The government voided the fraudulent mineral lease after Dane's conspiracy was exposed. General Reed placed the property under protected agricultural status while Congress investigated Meridian. But I did not wait for officials to decide what my inheritance meant. I returned to the farm with Daniel and Lily. The barn was gone. The house leaned. Weeds covered the south field where men had killed for what slept beneath the soil. I placed both palms on the ground. The earth opened its memory. My father walking the rows, my mother touching the air before storms. Ancestors whose names had faded but whose power remained inside the land. The ore beneath the field was not merely mineral. It was convergent stone. Earth that had absorbed generations of elemental energy. Meridian had mined fragments. Raymond had sold samples. Voss had built a program around stolen bloodlines. I sealed the deepest vein beneath layers of stone no drill could penetrate. Then I opened my hidden space. The golden fields connected to the farm. Fresh water filled the old well. Black soil replaced exhausted ground. The orchard bloomed out of season. Daniel learned to coax seedlings through earth without breaking their roots. Lily learned to cool fevered skin and purify water. I taught them control before power, kindness before strength, choice before duty. Samuel became the farm manager after leaving Raymond's transport unit. He never called himself loyal, but he remained beside us through every investigation and every threat. General Reed survived. The healing river steadied his heart. Eleanor helped rescue the remaining Meridian children and built a refuge where families could learn without surrendering custody. Captain Shaw led the prosecutions. Charles Webb printed the names. Meridian did not disappear in a day. No empire did. But doors opened, files surfaced, parents came forward. Officers resigned, facilities emptied, and the people who believed secrecy made them untouchable discovered that truth could travel faster than orders. Raymond received one final hearing before he was transferred to federal prison. I attended alone. He looked older. Not from time, from the loss of obedience around him. When the guards brought him past me, he stopped. Are the children about me? No. That wounded him more than hatred. He lowered his voice. I did love them. The water inside the glass beside us darkened. He saw it. His shoulders fell. I could have been different. Yes, was there ever a chance? In the first life, I gave you every chance. He looked at me. Understanding arrived slowly. The fire, the words. The impossible knowledge. His face emptied. You really came back, yes. What happened to me? You lived long enough to watch them burn. He closed his eyes. For one moment, I saw the man he might have been if regret had arrived before consequence. Then he opened them. Will you kill me? No. He looked surprised. I stepped aside so the guards could take him. You are going to live without rank, money, authority, or anyone left to blame. That is the life you built. He was led away. He did not look back. That winter, snow covered the restored farm. Daniel and Lily played beside the new barn while Samuel repaired a fence. Eleanor sat on the porch with Grace, teaching her how to shape blue flame into harmless birds. I stood in the south field. The wind moved through the wheat. Water ran beneath the frozen ground. Fire warmed the house. Stone held the buried convergence vein. Every element rested around my children like a promise. In my first life, I had awakened too late to save them. In this one, I did more than protect them. I gave them a world where their power belonged to no husband, no army, no office, and no fear. Daniel ran toward me with Lily behind him. Mama, he called. Come see what we made. I turned from the field. The past had given me revenge. My children gave me a future. And this time, nothing burned.